Liu Yuan, did anything happen? Ren Xiaosu asked. Addressed as Liu Yuan, the boy's full name was Yan Liu Yuan. From his appearance, Yan Liu Yuan looked like a very harmless and innocent person. However, he was holding a bone knife in his hands and standing guard at the door. It was deep into the night at the moment, but he did not close his eyes even though he looked very sleepy, as he had to keep watch through the night. Yan Liu Yuan shook his head and said, "No, everything is fine." What exactly is this sickness you're experiencing in your head? Even the town's doctor can't diagnose what's wrong with you. You don't have to worry about such things. What I'm experiencing is not a sickness. Ren Xiaosu said firmly, "It'll be dawn soon, and I'll be going out to hunt. You should sleep for a while so that you can get up in time for school." "Okay." Yan Liu Yuan nodded, glum. "But what's the point of studying in a wasteland like this? It will be useful for you in the future," Ren Xiaosu said in an irrefutable tone. "I want to go out to hunt too." Yan Liu Yuan pouted. "Who's going to keep watch at night if something happens to you?" "Me, who's unconscious." Ren Xiaosu stood up and prepared to go fetch water from the town center as it was less dangerous to do so after dawn broke. During the night, it was a lawless land out there. Dark clouds were building up without rest in the cloudy sky. A drop of acid rain eventually fell from above. It got blown about by the strong winds and finally landed in front of Ren Xiaosu. Ren Xiaosu was lying on the ground in the wilderness. He frowned and felt that he was a little unlucky today as the acid rain arrived before his prey appeared. Someone mentioned that he must be careful of the beasts while moving around in this wasteland. But Ren Xiaosu felt that the person left everything else unspoken, because many things could still kill a person out in this wasteland. One of them was the acid rain. However, Ren Xiaosu still did not make a move. If he couldn't catch some game today, he and Yan Liu Yuan would starve to death before they could die from the disease caused by the acid rain. Ren Xiaosu's eyes popped when he heard a bird's wings flapping. However, the rhythm of his breathing did not change. Ren Xiaosu had used a tree branch to prop up a black cauldron and scattered some black bread crumbs underneath it a short distance ahead of himself. That large bird landed beside the cauldron and looked around sharply with an alert gaze. The size of the bird was not that much smaller than the cauldron, in fact. As it stood in the same spot preening its feathers, Ren Xiaosu did not make a move and continued waiting. The bird finally seemed to let its guard down as it started sneaking towards the cauldron as a thief would. However, when it entered into the boundary under the cauldron and was about to lower its head to peck on the bread crumbs, Ren Xiaosu pulled hard on the rope in his hand. Right after, the young man jumped up and rushed towards the cauldron like an unbridled wild donkey. Before the large bird could flip the cauldron over, he mustered all of his strength and used his body to pin down the cauldron. Phew! Ren Xiaosu heaved a sigh of relief as he had waited an entire night just to catch this sparrow. Fortunately, his efforts had not gone to waste today, especially since such good opportunities were hard to come by. Clattering came from inside the cauldron as the struggling sparrow battered its tough wings against it. At this moment, the short melody of the clock striking the hour rang from the refugee stronghold. Ren Xiaosu turned around and looked at the town. He wondered when he could finally bring Yan Liu Yuan to live inside the stronghold. To Ren Xiaosu, the people living in the stronghold were fortunate because they did not have to face the dangers of the wastelands. However, not just anyone could enter that place as they wished. Right at this moment, the activity in the cauldron quieted by a lot. He let out a sigh and checked if the ragged cloth was wrapped firmly around his hand. Then Ren Xiaosu slowly lifted the cauldron up to create a tiny opening and put his hand in. He attempted to grab hold of the large sparrow by its legs. However, life was not always that smooth sailing. Ren Xiaosu yelped right after putting his hand under the cauldron. Ren Xiaosu pulled out his hand and had a look at his palm. The web between his thumb and forefinger was bleeding, as not even the ragged cloth could protect it against the sparrow's sharp beak. Ren Xiaosu got angry. He removed his ragged jacket and wrapped it around his hand. Then he thrust his hand under the cauldron again and grabbed the sparrow by its neck this time. He took the sparrow out from under the cauldron and tucked it in his arm. With a strong twist of his hand, the sparrow's neck broke and it went limp. At this moment, Ren Xiaosu felt a pinch in his heart because the large sparrow's claws had punched several holes into his jacket. Suddenly, his mind went blank, and Ren Xiaosu fell to his knees. It was as if a massive copper bell had been struck inside his head. Then he descended into a chaotic darkness. Oh no! In the past, this sickness only occurred at midnight, but now it came earlier. This was not the first time his sickness had acted up. Almost all the people in town knew there was something wrong with his head, and his pain would flare up at random times. Only Ren Xiaosu knew that it was not pain but a state of confusion that he was experiencing. Wait a minute. This time, it was different from the past. The black mist in his mind had dispersed and revealed a palace beyond it. Ren Xiaosu's eyes flew open, and he stood up. He looked at himself in disbelief. I came to this quickly. He originally had a chance to get a closer look at the palace's appearance, but he knew better. There was no difference between remaining unconscious and dying out here in the wilderness. Right now, he had to rush back to the town that was situated outside of Stronghold 113 before the heavens opened up with the acid rain. Ren Xiaosu tied the sparrow's legs together and slung it over his shoulder. Then he lifted the big cauldron and inverted it onto his head before running away. Pitter-patter. Raindrops started falling on the cauldron. The cauldron had turned into his umbrella. Before he could run far, however, the silhouette of a person holding a bone knife stood in his way. Give your catch to me, but before the person could finish his sentence, he saw a big cauldron swinging in closer and closer, until it smacked into his face. Damn! The robber fell backwards. He had not expected Ren Xiaosu's attack to be that swift. And it was so forceful too. Then he saw Ren Xiaosu lower the pot before swinging it back up and placing it over his head to use as an umbrella, all in a single, continuous motion. The robber had not even fallen to the ground, yet Ren Xiaosu was already running off into the distance. The robber laid on the ground facing the sky as the acid rain came down. It was a little painful and stung his face. There was something about this that he could not understand. In most situations, shouldn't there be some interaction between them? Just how many times had this young man encountered a similar situation to react so instinctively? Something was not right. He could hear that young man's footsteps approaching again. The robber hurriedly sat up and turned around to look. He discovered that the young man was coming back to him. Ren Xiaosu had not planned to return, but he distinctly heard a voice reverberate from the palace in his mind, "Quest, gift your catch to someone else." Who said that? Ren Xiaosu turned around and walked back to the robber with some uncertainty. The robber said in panic, "Let's talk this over." "Hey, that's not right, I'm the victim here," Ren Xiaosu sized up the robber. He noticed that there were no others nearby. "You want this sparrow?" Ren Xiaosu asked. The robber's eyes lit up. "I do." "Here, take it." Ren Xiaosu stuffed the sparrow into the man's arms without explaining himself. That unfamiliar yet neutral voice intoned again, "Quest complete. Awarded, basic skill duplication scroll. You may use it to learn another person's skills." Ren Xiaosu was stunned, because he could feel a leather parchment appear within his mind. A skill duplication scroll that he could use to copy another's skills? Like hunting? Survival? Or some other skill? The robber hugged the large sparrow tightly in his arms and began to express his gratitude. "You're a good person." Before he could finish speaking, he saw Ren Xiaosu grab the sparrow back before leaving again. The robber was confused. He stared at Ren Xiaosu's receding figure as he scurried away. The fuck is this guy? What is he after? During the day, people from the stronghold still came out to maintain order. But at night, those people would return back to the stronghold. Of course, the people from the stronghold were not doing this with good intentions. They were only worried that if the town got too chaotic, it would affect the manual labor that the refugees were performing. Oh, looks like Ren Xiaosu got quite the harvest today. When Ren Xiaosu ran back into town carrying the cauldron, someone with a dirty face greeted him. It was as though he had not washed his face ever since the day he was born. Most of the people in town looked like that. On most days, they went to the nearby coal mine to work in exchange for some food. The coal they mined would be delivered into the stronghold, and in turn, the workers would receive just enough black bread or potatoes to survive on. It wasn't only the mining of coal. All the necessary dirty work the stronghold needed to be done would be performed by the refugees. Since the well water in town was rationed, the amount that everyone got per day was fixed, and no one dared to even think of asking for more. Besides, barely any clean water sources existed nearby. Or rather, any clean water source was too dangerous to go to since feral beasts would gather there to drink. Hence everyone in town would always look so dirty that no one could see their faces clearly. Ren Xiaosu was no exception either. However, Ren Xiaosu had never worked in the coal mine before. He had his own way of surviving. Ren Xiaosu did not respond to anyone who greeted him. He just wanted to get back to his shack as quickly as possible. As Ren Xiaosu took an alternate way into town, he could see the towering stronghold walls from a short distance away. It felt very oppressive, for he could not even see the top when he looked up. Not many stone structures could be found in town as most people only stayed in shacks. Ren Xiaosu had started out quite relaxed. But he went on guard the moment he entered town and even drew the bone knife from his waist. The atmosphere on the street grew tense as though some kind of danger lurked within the shacks. But with Ren Xiaosu holding a bone knife in his hand, the people with threatening intentions restrained themselves. The first thing Ren Xiaosu learned while staying here was not to trust anyone, other than Yan Liaoyuan. Whispers came from the shack next to the road. Ren Xiaosu has caught more game meat. How does that count as game? It's only a sparrow. But it's different from the sparrow that we saw in the ancient textbooks. I reckon that the eagles from before the cataclysm were also around this size. Don't provoke him. A voice ended the whispering from inside the shack. Someone seemed to know about Ren Xiaosu's past. Ren Xiaosu lifted the curtain door to his shack. The warmth in it made him less tense. When Yan Liaoyuan, who was sitting in the shack and doing his homework, saw Ren Xiaosu return, he looked pleasantly surprised. You caught a sparrow. Why didn't you light the kerosene lamp? Ren Xiaosu asked while frowning. Yan Liaoyuan was usually a wayward child, but in front of Ren Xiaosu, who was like his elder brother, he became surprisingly docile. I wanted to save some fuel for us. What if you become nearsighted? Ren Xiaosu put the sparrow down. Yan Liaoyuan's eyes lit up. The schoolteacher mentioned something called spectacles that existed before the cataclysm but can only be found in the stronghold now. If we have something like that, we won't have to worry about being nearsighted anymore. Ren Xiaosu treated the statement with disdain. I've seen someone wearing the thing that you mentioned before. But to have your vision depend on something that could be dropped at any time out here in the wilderness, that's as good as death. Don't listen to your teacher's nonsense. Not everything he says is right. Oh, Yan Liaoyuan nodded and said, then why do you still insist on sending me to school? Ren Xiaosu choked on his words. Why do you keep blabbering? When can I go hunting with you? Yan Liaoyuan continued to ask. You're only 14. Why would you want to go hunting? If you do well in school, you won't have to go hunting. Ren Xiaosu said, isn't it much better to learn accounting, physics, or chemistry rather than hunting? Aren't you only 17? Yan Liaoyuan was unconvinced. In this era, even savages recognized the importance of knowledge. This was also why a teacher could survive in town. Whatever trouble happened in town, a teacher would always be the safest person since no one would target them. However, tuition was expensive. Otherwise, Ren Xiaosu would have gone to attend classes himself as well. Ren Xiaosu propped up the cauldron and skillfully dissected the sparrow at the same time. What did the teacher talk about today? I can only let you eat the sparrow's offal. I have to sell off the rest of it at the market tomorrow. Did you get injured? Yan Liuyuan frowned when he saw the wound on Ren Xiaosu's hand. It had been pecked by the sparrow, and the wound was still bleeding. The big cauldron was hung on a rod, and the flicking fire in the shack's fire pit illuminated Ren Xiaosu's face every now and again. It's just a scratch. It fell silent in the shack. After a while, Ren Xiaosu ladled out the cooked organs of the sparrow from the pot and handed them to Yan Liuyuan. Eat up. Yan Liuyuan's eyes suddenly reddened. I don't want it. You should have it instead since you need to heal your wound. I'll just have some soup. Ren Xiaosu said, I still have some black bread that I can eat. I'm not eating. Your wound isn't a scratch at all. I saw someone in town die as a result of an infection a few days ago because we don't have access to any medicine for treating cuts and scrapes, Yan Liuyuan stubbornly said as tears nearly rolled down his face. Pa! Ren Xiaosu suddenly slapped Yan Liuyuan across the face and said, remember this, you and I can never cry as long as we are living in this world. This world doesn't trust tears. Ren Xiaosu continued, look at what kind of people are around us. What will happen to me if you don't eat well and someone rushes in and stabs me to death at night? I send you to school because I hope you won't become someone like me, who only knows how to hunt. You have a unique skill. As long as you study hard, you will not need to work all day in the wilderness like me to earn a living. The reason I send you to school is because I don't want you to become savages like them. Yan Liuyuan suddenly took the sparrow offal from Ren Xiaosu and gobbled them down. He managed to hold back his tears in the end as he wanted to learn to be as strong as Ren Xiaosu. Ahem, come over and help me dress the wound with a clean cloth after you've eaten, Ren Xiaosu said. Okay, Yan Liuyuan responded. You're normally full of mischief when we're outside, so why do you behave like such a doormat whenever we're home? Ren Xiaosu sighed. Did anything happen in town today? Oh yes. Yan Liuyuan said as he looked for a clean cloth. A group of people came out of the stronghold saying that they were looking for a guide to lead them to stronghold 112. They want to head there by going straight through the Jing Mountains. They want to go to stronghold 112. Ren Xiaosu was stunned for a moment before frowning. They're even insisting on getting there via the Jing Mountains. Do you think they'll come looking for you? Everyone in town knows that you're familiar with the lands outside. Yan Liuyuan blinked and said, I heard that they're musicians and singers of a band in Stronghold 113 who have been invited to perform at Stronghold 112. I've never seen a singer before though. I'm not going. Ren Xiaosu shook his head and said, let those people go via the Jing Mountains if they want. I want you to stay away from them. There's something strange about those people. At this moment, Ren Xiaosu had conflicted feelings. In a world like this, there were still professional singers and musicians in bands? What on earth was it like inside the stronghold? Ren Xiaosu was suddenly looking forward to finding out. Before sleeping, he instructed Yan Liuyuan again, stay away from those people if you see them. It can't be that they don't know how dangerous the Jing Mountains are. Most people would choose to avoid passing through there, yet they insist on taking that route. My instincts tell me that this isn't a simple matter. Okay. Yan Liuyuan nodded obediently. Got it. As a matter of fact, Ren Xiaosu and Yan Liuyuan were quite the odd team. A few years ago, they did not know each other at all. Later on, Ren Xiaosu decided to protect the young Yan Liuyuan as he unintentionally discovered Yan Liuyuan's secret. On top of that, his headache had been troubling him for a very long time, so he needed someone to keep watch for him at night. Back then, Ren Xiaosu told Yan Liuyuan in no uncertain terms that they were only a team because of mutual benefit. But over the years, it soon became unclear whether their partnership had any feelings involved or if it was still for mutual benefit. Yan Liuyuan had always been a very clever person when outside. He only behaved like an obedient lamb in front of Ren Xiaosu. Sometimes, Yan Liuyuan would say that he was only alive because Ren Xiaosu had risked his own life to save him. However, Ren Xiaosu had never acknowledged it. At present, Ren Xiaosu only wanted to find out what kinds of changes his mind had gone through. He waited a very long time tonight as he wanted to see if this sickness that had been troubling him would recur. In the end, that chaotic confusion did not set in. It seemed like the palace had always stayed hidden when he was in a confused state. But now, that black mist of confusion finally dispersed. Ren Xiaosu wanted to see exactly what was inside the palace. When Yan Liuyuan saw Ren Xiaosu lie down next to him, he silently picked up the bone knife and sat at the entrance of the shack where the curtain door was. As it was almost fall, it felt a little cold. At this moment, the rain stopped. Footsteps came from outside the shack's curtain door. The shoes that were stepping on the muddy road after the rain made a unique slippery sound. Someone lifted a corner of the curtain door. However, before the visitor could lift the curtain door aside, Yan Liuyuan's bone knife was pressed against the person's neck. It was a pretty face, a beautiful woman stood outside. Yan Liuyuan frowned when he saw the woman. It was not a stranger. She lived nearby. The woman smiled. Liuyuan, you're still awake? Where is Xiaosu? I heard that he got back. He's already asleep, big sister Xiaoyu. Yan Liuyuan smiled. If you have anything to say, just tell me. Xiaoyu's face looked a little unnatural. Did he get hurt when he went out this time? His hand was nipped by a sparrow. But big sister Xiaoyu, you don't have to be so concerned about my brother, do you? After all, you're 8 years older than him. After Ren Xiaosu had fallen asleep, Yan Liuyuan adopted a maturity beyond his years when dealing with outsiders. No matter whether he knew the person or whatever they might say, he didn't move the bone knife away from her neck. Xiaoyu took out a cigarette and lighter from her bag that she carried around. It was a rolled cigarette that was only distributed at the coal mines, power plants, and other properties under the control of the stronghold. A lot of the able-bodied laborers went there to work not only for the money and food, but also for the cigarettes. They would receive a cigarette for each day of work they put in. As such, at night after work, a large group of people could be regularly seen gathering together and smoking. Ren Xiaosu once explained to Yan Liuyuan that the cigarettes were likely mixed with something highly addictive. However, it was obvious that Xiaoyu did not get her cigarette from working at those places. Xiaoyu lit the cigarette and took 2 puffs from it. She seemed to be thinking of something. You cheeky imp, I consider you two my little brothers. Oh! Yan Liuyuan suddenly asked, did you catch a cold? Xiaoyu was stunned. Yes, does my voice sound a little hoarse? No. Yan Liuyuan shook his head and laughed. I saw that the smoke was not coming out from one of your nostrils after you took a puff. Xiaoyu was speechless. For some reason, Xiaoyu felt that Yan Liuyuan did not like her very much. Then I'll head back first. Xiaoyu said, when your brother wakes up, tell him that I came over. Okay. Yan Liuyuan smiled. I'll pass the message along. After Xiaoyu left, Ren Xiaosu suddenly spoke from behind Yan Liuyuan. Don't bully big sister Xiaoyu in the future. It's not easy for her either. Bro, she's not decent. Yan Liuyuan said, besides, she's only sticking close to you because she knows you always succeed when hunting. Who's decent around here? Ren Xiaosu said calmly, no decent person can survive in this world. Everyone's hand is forced by their living conditions. We can only distance ourselves from her. Don't make fun of her. A chaste woman who was too decent would not be able to survive in this town. Ren Xiaosu thought for a while and said, she didn't even mention that she likes me. Besides, are you sure that she's only getting close to me because I'm successful at hunting? And not because I'm handsome? Bro, everyone has not washed their faces for months. Everyone here looks basically the same. Yan Liuyuan was speechless as he looked at Ren Xiaosu. Bro, didn't you fall asleep? Why are you still awake? I was just thinking, Ren Xiaosu said as a brief explanation. Ren Xiaosu was not asleep because he had been exploring the secrets of the palace in his mind. In the circular palace, the walls were lined with old wooden cabinets, making it look like a huge showroom of sorts. However, he could not see what was on the display cabinets in the showroom as they were covered in black mist. In the middle of the room, there was only one table with a brass typewriter on top of it. It was an obsolete typewriter that would make loud clacking sounds when typed on and hadn't existed for a very long time since the cataclysm. There were only 24 brass keys on this typewriter. Each of them was engraved with a character: fair, positive, honest, real, friendly, kind, rich, strong, etc. It was full of positive energy, in a manner of speaking. But it seemed that the typewriter was supplied with an unlimited amount of leather parchment and would move by itself without anyone typing on the brass keys. Currently on it were two small lines of words that had appeared during the afternoon: quest, gift your catch to someone else. Quest complete. Awarded basic skill duplication scroll. You may use it to learn another person's skills. He could not tell if he was imagining this or if there was some other explanation for it. According to legend, some people could create a memory palace and build a fantasy world based on the level of their spiritual will. But Ren Xiaosu felt that his palace looked a little different from the description of a memory palace. Why would it get him to gift his catch to someone else? Did this typewriter want him to be a good person? To be a good person in a world where ethics came at a premium? No way in hell. At this moment, his consciousness was standing in the center of the vast palace as he looked at the display cabinets around him. It looked like items were floating within the display cabinets, but they were hidden by the darkness. That black mist didn't allow Ren Xiaosu to see what was floating inside. These display cabinets were connected to the dome of the palace, making it look like a huge museum. Ren Xiaosu walked up to one of the cabinets and tried touching the item floating in the black mist. But no matter how hard he tried, he could not penetrate the resistance of the black mist. It was a power that he could not pry into right now. If Ren Xiaosu wanted to know whether the palace was real, he would have to use actions to prove its existence. Sitting at the entrance of the shack, Yan Liuyuan was stunned as he lifted the curtain door to gaze at the starry sky after the rain. You mean, I'm still not sure. I have to try it out and see. Ren Xiaosu sat down beside Yan Liuyuan. According to the legends in town, someone could pull a train out of thin air. I didn't believe it in the past, but after I met you, I thought that it might be a possibility. Now that I might also have a strange skill, this feels very weird to me. Yan Liuyuan's skill was luck. It was a very baffling skill to comprehend. When Yan Liuyuan made a wish for Ren Xiaosu to return from a successful hunt, a sparrow would mysteriously drop at his feet even though he did not do anything while walking out in the wilderness. However, this skill had a side effect. Yan Liuyuan would usually get a fever that would not subside or suffer some other minor illnesses or mishaps after he made a wish. This was why Ren Xiaosu wanted to protect Yan Liuyuan at the beginning. At first, he did not believe it. But later, he had no choice but to accept this truth. Suddenly, a shooting star flashed across the sky. Yan Liuyuan subconsciously put his hands together to make a wish. However, he was stopped by Ren Xiaosu. Don't you go making any wishes. Something is going to happen to you if you do. Nowadays, Ren Xiaosu rarely depended on Yan Liuyuan's luck as he was capable of hunting with great success. He did not need Yan Liuyuan to cast his skill anymore, and Yan Liuyuan wouldn't go against his wishes either. The skinny Yan Liuyuan watched the shooting star vanished, lost in thought. Why do shooting stars come and go so quickly? What if people can't make a wish in time? Ren Xiaosu thought for a while and answered, they probably move so quickly because they don't actually want to listen to anyone's wishes. Yan Liuyuan turned his head and gave Ren Xiaosu a blank stare. Yan Liuyuan was Ren Xiaosu's night watchman, but it did not mean that he had to keep watch throughout the night. Ren Xiaosu would take turns with him. After all, Yan Liuan still needed to attend school during the day. This was an excruciating situation, as not getting enough sleep was a huge problem. But to survive in such an environment, be it Ren Xiaosu or Yan Liuyuan, they had no choice but to take these actions. In the early morning, Ren Xiaosu led Yan Liuyuan outside. They took their valuables, including Ren Xiaosu's big cauldron, with them. It was expected for someone to rummage through their shack by the time they returned at night. I heard that the people living in the stronghold don't shut their doors at night because no one will steal their things. Yan Liuyuan was carrying a bedroll on his back while he looked at Ren Xiaosu holding the cauldron he carried wherever he went. These were almost all of their belongings. Yan Liuyuan would usually carry the bedroll with him whenever he went to school. It was almost the same situation with the other students as well. Everyone was accustomed to this. Bullshit. Although Ren Xiaosu looked forward to living in the stronghold, he refused to believe there was a place where people would leave their doors open at night. Some people have the mindset that even the farts of those who live in the stronghold smell good and that the air there is sweet. But you still shouldn't be carrying that cauldron on your back everywhere you go, Yan Liuyuan said. What do you know? Ren Xiaosu explained, it wasn't easy for me to get my hands on this cauldron. I can cook meals and catch sparrows with it. If we lose it, how are we going to spend our days? Ren Xiaosu held the cauldron over his shoulder with one hand while clutching the large sparrow upside down in his other. Along the way, many people were looking at Ren Xiaosu with envious eyes. It was important to realize that humans were no longer at the top of the food chain. There were rumors that the sparrows of the past were smaller than the size of a palm. But these days, even a bird like that could kill people by pecking them. Not everyone could catch a sparrow or had the patience to lie in wait in the wilderness for an entire day to catch one. They all hadn't seen meat and fish dishes in a long time, so it would be a lie if they were not envious of Ren Xiaosu. Ren Xiaosu led Yan Liuyuan to the stronghold's city gate. The towering walls made them feel minuscule and oppressed. Once they reached this place, there were noticeable changes in the architecture, and they could even see brick houses. As they approached the stronghold, the place began to look cleaner, tidier, and wealthier. The people living here were likely related to the people living in the stronghold. Perhaps they were good at flattery or had relatives living inside. But no matter what, these refugees were all known as contaminated and were not allowed inside the stronghold. Ren Xiaosu walked into a shop with a grocery store sign above the entrance. All sorts of items, such as cigarettes, matchsticks, metalware, food, and clothing, were sold in here. But the prices were very expensive. The old man in the shop was over the moon when he saw Ren Xiaosu. That looks like a rather large sparrow. Ren Xiaosu threw the sparrow onto the glass counter. How much can I get for this? Oh my, don't be so rough. That's an expensive piece of glass you're throwing it onto, Old Wang said, pained. He picked up the limp sparrow and put it onto the metallic scale beside him. 1.74 kilograms. Not bad, Xiaosu. At this moment, the claw-like fingers of Old Wang's wrinkled hands instinctively started making some calculations on an abacus. The abacus beads were pushed around, ticking and tacking. The market rate today is 200 yuan 1 per 500 grams, so I'll pay you 700 for this catch. Make it 900. Ren Xiaosu said firmly, it's almost winter, and there are fewer sparrows out there these days, so 900 yuan is the lowest I will sell it for. Old Wang was unhappy as he pushed his abacus in front of Ren Xiaosu and said, I'll be sending this sparrow into the stronghold for the aristocracy to eat. Although there's a lack of meat in the stronghold, there's still a fixed price for everything. We have to do it by the book. Right as Old Wang finished speaking, he saw Ren Xiaosu take the sparrow back and get ready to leave the shop. He quickly yanked the sleeve of Ren Xiaosu's ragged jacket. Where are you going? I'm going to check the price at Old Li's grocery store, Ren Xiaosu said. Old Wang's grasp tightened even further. Someone from the strongholds management had specifically given notice that they would be coming out to collect exotic animals today. This news wasn't promulgated to him alone. Old Wang smiled, his wrinkles appearing. How much do you want to sell it for? Ren Xiaosu still wanted to leave. We'll talk again after I ask around. Old Wang smiled amiably. Then won't Lai Yuan be late for school? All right, 900 yuan it is. What did you just say? Ren Xiaosu asked calmly. Then wouldn't Lai Yuan be late the sentence before that? How much do you want to sell it for? 1200. Old Wang was confused. A moment later, Old Wang was feeling the pinch as he counted the money. He wet his fingers with his saliva and counted the cash over and over again, afraid that he would get the amount wrong. The final transaction price was 1,198 yuan. Ren Xiaosu had also given some concessions of his own. A sparrow fetching 1,198 yuan was not the result of the inflated prices, nor was it because of the large size of the sparrow. More importantly, it was because the people in Stronghold 113 did not normally get the chance to eat such exotic animals. Things were precious because they were scarce. Old Wang would never make a bad business deal. When he resold this sparrow to a powerful customer, he would still be able to earn a small profit from it and even gain their favor. Old Wang stuffed a stash of loose change into Ren Xiaosu's hands unwillingly. Nobody knew what he was thinking when he lowered his voice and whispered, "Xiaosu, the next time you catch a sparrow, don't kill it. Some aristocrats want them alive and will offer an even higher price to buy them in that state." Ren Xiaosu was taken aback. Why would they want a live sparrow? So that they can kill it themselves. No. Old Wang shook his head and said, "You don't know, right? There are people who keep them as pets. You won't understand the world that the rich live in." Old Wang laughed and said, "I heard that rich people used to keep eagles as pets a few hundred years ago. But haven't the eagles gotten too big and dangerous now? So the next best thing is the sparrows. Just look at how menacing this sparrow looks. It's exactly what the rich like." Ren Xiaosu thought about it for a while. So while there were still a lot of people who didn't have enough to eat, some people had started keeping sparrows as pets. "But I'll have to sell it for a higher price if they want it alive." Ren Xiaosu said, "When this bird is still alive, it can even kill people if you aren't careful. It's too dangerous." All of a sudden, Ren Xiaosu thought that if the refugees outside the stronghold were contaminated, wouldn't the sparrows be contaminated as well? Or did the people in the stronghold only need these refugees to work for them? And the walls, did they naturally divide them into a hierarchy? You can only get rich by taking risks. Old Wang smiled and said, "Since you can wait an entire night hunting, you're no ordinary person. If you make an effort to catch a live sparrow, you can probably afford to stop working for the next 6 months. Besides, haven't you thought about making some money so that you can get a wife?" "Get a wife? My ass!" Ren Xiaosu said petulantly. Old Wang purposely said in a mysterious tone, "Old Li, who lives next door, has a daughter who's studying at the same school as your little brother, Lai Yuan. She's a really decent girl. Based on what you said, wouldn't it be better if I just sold this sparrow to Old Li directly? Would I still need your introduction then?" Ren Xiaosu turned his head to Yan Liuyuan and asked, "Is Old Li's daughter your classmate?" "Yes." Yan Liuyuan nodded. "She's quite big." "Shoo, go play over there," Old Wang snapped. "Pretend I didn't say anything since you're mistaking my kindness for ill intent." Seeing that he almost got caught between Ren Xiaosu and Yan Liuyuan's bantering, Old Wang decisively stopped them by changing the topic. "Remember, the next time you catch a live sparrow, you must bring it to me." "Sure." Ren Xiaosu nodded. Although catching it alive was dangerous, it was not impossible. He looked around the grocery store and asked, "How much are you selling the cotton padded jacket for?" The jackets are new arrivals, and they cost 500 yuan apiece. You should know that I bought them for 490 yuan each. I'm not looking to profit from selling these cotton-padded jackets at all. Old Wang said, one less death is one life saved, after all. How kind of you, praised Ren Xiaosu nonchalantly. I'll buy one. Check and see what size Liuyuan should wear. Bro, buy one for yourself too, Yan Liuyuan quickly said. Don't interrupt when adults are talking. Ren Xiaosu frowned. I'm not cold. Money was a good thing. The organizations that controlled the strongholds issued money to ensure the distribution of goods and materials. Although it was convenient, without it, nothing could be done. The winter here was freezing, but he had to put some money aside in case of emergencies. As there was still over a month left until winter, Ren Xiaosu thought that it would not be too late to buy another cotton-padded jacket by then if he could catch another sparrow. More importantly, it was time for Yan Liuyuan to pay for his monthly tuition. Ren Xiaosu glanced around the grocery store again, his gaze resting at the counter behind Old Wang. How much are you selling the antibiotics and anti-inflammatory drugs for? You want to buy medicine? Only then did Old Wang notice the blood-stained bandage wrapped around Ren Xiaosu's hand. You're injured? You really must buy some medicine then. If not, you could get an infection and die. I'm asking you how much it is. Ren Xiaosu said impatiently. 210 yuan each. Old Wang said, antibiotics must be taken for 3 days straight. I'll sell you 3 pills for 620 yuan and give you an application of iodopovidone 1 for free. I only have 10 pills left in stock here. Ren Xiaosu thought for a while before saying, how about rounding it down? If by rounding down, you mean removing the zero, shut it, Old Wang snapped. Ren Xiaosu smacked his lips and reluctantly looked away. Forget it, I'm not buying them. Inflammation is uncommon during winter. He turned around and led Yan Liuyuan to school. When they passed by the grain store, Ren Xiaosu went in and bought a long loaf of black bread. The black bread was mixed with something that would make their throats uncomfortable when swallowed. Yan Liuyuan said as he chewed on the black bread, Bro, why don't you also pay for the tuition and come to school since you want to attend classes so much? I still have to go out to hunt. Ren Xiaosu said, about what Old Wang said earlier, there are quite a few well-to-do girls in your school, right? You had better not fall in love at such an early age. I heard that people in the past used to get married when they were around 13 to 14 years old, Yan Liuyuan retorted. Although he had never given such matters any thought before, he found it fun and enjoyable to bicker with Ren Xiaosu. Finding joy amid hardship was probably one of the greatest skills that humans had. Ren Xiaosu feigned a slap upside Yan Liuyuan's head. How can we compare what people did in the past? You're still young. The women you get into a relationship with now will end up becoming someone else's wife in the future. Ren Xiaosu marveled at the thought. A relationship with someone else's wife sounds quite exciting for some reason. Bro, what are you talking about? Why can't I understand? Said Yan Liuyuan while blinking. Get lost. Stop acting innocent with me, Ren Xiaosu said peeved. The school was the cleanest and tidiest place in the entire town. It was also the only residence that had its own individual yard. Walking in from the outside, properly spaced crops grown in the yard could be seen, scallions, garlic sprouts, potatoes, cabbages, and many others. Ren Xiaosu felt that a place like a school should have bamboo trees growing around it instead. But then again, with food not easily accessible these days, it was quite fortunate to have a place to grow these vegetables. As such, Ren Xiaosu's wish was for Yan Liuyuan to become a teacher when he grew up. It was not because he had a lot of respect for teachers, but that he felt that being a teacher was safe. They also had the privilege of having their own yard to grow some vegetables in. Furthermore, no one would ever steal their crops. It was such a wonderful thing. Generally speaking, Ren Xiaosu's wishes had always been very simple. Yan Liuyuan took his tuition money and went to class. Ren Xiaosu squatted on top of the wall and listened to what was being taught inside the classroom. As he could not afford to pay the tuition, he had to eavesdrop like this. The teacher would sometimes tell the students stories about how glorious human civilization was in the past. Frankly, however, the teacher had not witnessed such a time either. Whatever he was telling them now were details passed on by word of mouth, so the truth had probably been distorted already. Although it was not very reliable, Ren Xiaosu was still fascinated by it. At times, Ren Xiaosu would ask Yan Liuyuan questions about information he didn't understand or hear. This greatly troubled Yan Liuyuan because if he could not answer him, it would show that he did not pay attention during the lessons. Hence, whenever Ren Xiaosu was present to attend the lessons, Yan Liuyuan would be exceptionally attentive during class. For some reason, Yan Liuyuan had to admit that his brother looked rather charming when he was seriously learning. It was no wonder Xiao would throw herself at him. The teacher was holding a book in the classroom as he stared with melancholic eyes at some of the sleeping students. Then he looked at Ren Xiaosu, who was on top of the wall outside the window. He said to Yan Liuyuan, "When you get back today, tell your brother that he can come into the yard and listen to my lessons in the future." "All right." Yan Liuyuan smiled happily. Most people felt that the teacher was wise and thought that he knew everything. However, Ren Xiaosu always had doubts since people specialized in different professions, which meant people were usually only good at certain things. So how could it be possible for Mr. Zhang to be omniscient? Ren Xiaosu had always been different from most other people as he liked to ponder questions that he came across. Later on, he found out from listening to Mr. Zhang's lessons that this was known as dialectical logic. Yan Liuyuan was sometimes bewildered because Ren Xiaosu would often oppose Mr. Zhang Jinglan's views, yet he still kept coming back to attend classes whenever he had free time. During the afternoon class, Ren Xiaosu especially brought Yan Liuyuan out to celebrate. It wasn't for any reason other than to celebrate the fact that he could start listening to the lessons from the yard in the future. Usually when he squatted on the walls, he was too distant from the classroom to clearly hear what was being taught. Zhang Jinglan used to like to keep the windows shut during class as he was afraid that any outside commotion would affect the students and distract them. But after he realized that Ren Xiaosu was eavesdropping from outside the class, he left a window open for him. And now, he might as well just let Ren Xiaosu into the yard. Living in this chaotic world, many of the students' parents sent their children to school not because they wanted them to gain knowledge, but so that they could easily get married in the future. This was especially true for the girls who attended school as they would often marry into good families. In this generation, it was impressive to be literate and to handle three-digit calculations. Everyone was busy trying to survive, so who would care if you were cultured or not when food was short? Hence, most of the parents were sending their children to school not because they had any long-term plans for them. Even in this hamlet, there were poor and rich people. Wherever there were people, comparisons were unavoidable. Yan Liuyuan saw Ren Xiaosu go into the grocery store to buy a filtered cigarette. Old Wang even proudly mentioned that his cigarettes did not have any additional substances and were very safe to smoke. A cigarette costs 20 yuan per stick, extremely expensive. Yan Liuyuan asked with suspicion, "Bro, why are you buying a cigarette?" "Your teacher allowed me to listen to his lessons from the yard. Even if I don't have to pay tuition, I should still show my gratitude." Ren Xiaosu smiled and said, "I know that Mr. Zhang likes to smoke." Whenever someone treated Ren Xiaosu kindly, he would return the gesture. While everyone was out in the school's backyard eating lunch, the two of them took the opportunity to approach Zhang Jinglan. He was eating some stir-fried cabbage when Ren Xiaosu handed the cigarette to him with a grin. Zhang Jinglan did not reject it. However, he made Yan Liuyuan stand a distance away from him. "It's not good for you to inhale cigarette smoke while you're still growing." Ren Xiaosu thanked him. "Thank you for letting me into the yard to attend your lessons, sir." "Phew! Zhang Jinglin lit the cigarette with a match he used for preparing meals at home. Then he blew out a breathful of smoke, looking pleased. Students who enjoy attending lessons like you are rare. You can attend the lessons if you like. In the future, you can stand at the door, but you're not allowed to enter the classroom. That's great. Ren Xiaosu said, Teacher, I have a question. Speak. Perhaps due to the fact that Zhang Jinglin rarely had the chance to have a smoke, he didn't mind any questions that Ren Xiaosu had for him. Teacher, you said before that humans had a lot of technology before the cataclysm happened. Since we humans were not wiped out, why didn't those technologies reappear? Zhang Jinglin glanced at Ren Xiaosu. For a period of time after the cataclysm, humans did not keep track of how long they had been drifting along in anarchy. It was good enough to survive each day, so nobody bothered with gaining knowledge and becoming a learned person. But we should still have some information left, right? If we learn them, couldn't we return to civilization quicker? Ren Xiaosu wondered. It's become lost through the generations, Zhang Jinglin said in regret. Let me ask you. If I gave you a set of instructions to construct an airplane, would you be able to make one? It's not like I've learned how to do it before. Although having the instructions can save a lot of time, I'll still have to start from scratch, Ren Xiaosu said. That's right. Everyone is starting from scratch. Zhang Jinglin looked at the remaining half of his cigarette, feeling a little pained. It looked like he was deciding on whether to keep smoking. He had intended to save the remaining half of the cigarette to smoke at a later time. But if he put out the cigarette in front of Ren Xiaosu and Yan Liaoyuan, wouldn't it be a loss of face for him? Ren Xiaosu was still doubtful. How could no one have overcome the hardships and gotten into research and building up knowledge again in all those years? Those who attempted all died from starvation, Zhang Jinglin said. Could all of that knowledge really have become lost through the generations? Ren Xiaosu could not accept it. Zhang Jinglin looked at Ren Xiaosu seriously this time and said pointedly, they are in the possession of a small number of people. That's enough. Zhang Jinglin stood up and said, don't pursue this matter any further. It's time for class. Ren Xiaosu pestered Zhang Jinglin with a final question. Teacher, when were the walls of the stronghold built? And why did they build them? After the cataclysm, wild animals ran rampant. A very long time ago, there was even a bug infestation. As such, humans were forced to build tall walls to ward off the danger, Zhang Jinglin explained. But even though animals have evolved, they don't actually initiate attacks on humans. Ren Xiaosu was curious about this. Monkeys still remained omnivores, and sparrows still loved eating grains, so it was not like they would actively try to make a meal out of humans. In the ring where humanity was living in at Stronghold 113, the majority of the more ferocious animals had actually been isolated outside of it. The higher the number of a stronghold, the more dangerous a place it was. For example, the legendary Stronghold 178 would often see many casualties each year as they tried to expel beasts from around their area. Meanwhile, Stronghold 113 was considered to be an inland area. There were still many dangers lurking out in the wilderness though, like the wolf pack he had encountered before. However, it wasn't impossible to overcome them. So then why were there still such towering walls built in a huge gathering place of humans like this one? Zhang Jinglin smiled and said, so long as danger still exists on the outside, refugees must depend on the stronghold to make a living. In this way, the stronghold will gain a large force of cheap labor. Do you think that the organizations controlling the strongholds do not have the ability to eliminate those dangers out there? The firearms and explosives that humans possess are more powerful than you can imagine. But why would they want to eliminate them? They don't pose any threat to the organizations at all. Ren Xiaosu fell deep into thought. Although he was mature beyond his years, there were still some things he hadn't experienced. As such, it was expected that he could not understand them. This was also the reason why he was so thirsty for knowledge. Zhang Jinglin continued, they won't topple the walls. Why would groups with a vested interest behind the walls give up a stronghold that gives them a natural class superiority? Zhang Jinglin then went to get a change of clothes. Ren Xiaosu asked, "Teacher, why did you change your clothes? Your previous set of clothes were not dirty at all." Zhang Jinglin adjusted his collar and replied, "The set I was wearing earlier reeks of cigarette smoke. It is not good for the students if they smell it." Yan Liuyuan's respect for him deepened, but Ren Xiaosu suddenly felt a little unhappy. "So it's all right for me to smell it then? It wasn't like you asked me to stand further away from you just now, right?" Zhang Jinglin thought for a long while. "Get lost." All of a sudden, Ren Xiaosu heard a voice speak again from the palace in his mind, "Quest, thirst for knowledge is never a bad thing. But you have to teach other people whatever you've learned." Ren Xiaosu was stunned. He did not fully understand what this quest required him to do. During the afternoon class, the students found it very refreshing when they saw Ren Xiaosu, who was a few years older than them, standing outside the door. It made many of the students turn their heads to look at him. Zhang Jinglin had to knock on the blackboard several times before he could get the students' attention. He said, "I'll be teaching about survival for the afternoon class." This was the current era, and the distinctiveness of school came from not only teaching the arts and sciences, but also teaching survival. However, Zhang Jinglin had always felt exasperated when teaching this lesson, because he wasn't experienced with surviving in the wild. Therefore, for most of this lesson, he could only teach it according to what was written in the books that were preserved from the past. Zhang Jinglin looked at the students in the classroom. "Pay attention and listen in class. Don't think that danger is very far from you. For now, your parents are still protecting you. But when you grow up, you have to learn how to protect yourselves. For today's lesson, we'll be discussing what you should do if you encounter a pack of wolves." The students in class actually liked listening to the survival lessons the most. The other subjects were still a little boring for their current age group, whereas they found the survival lessons to be the most interesting. The classroom quieted down. Zhang Jinglin looked at Ren Xiaosu, who was standing at the door and listening in on the lesson. "You there, tell us what you do when you encounter a pack of wolves in the wild." Ren Xiaosu gave it some thought before replying, "I'd try my best to find a slope surrounded by greenery, because that will be the most suitable place for an auspicious burial ground." Zhang Jinglin was surprised. Initially, Ren Xiaosu thought that Zhang Jinglin would refute him. After all, the way he answered the question would affect the teacher's authority and dignity. However, Zhang Jinglin thought for a long time before saying, "You can sit in the classroom for future lessons. You will also be teaching the survival lessons from now on." For the first time ever, the school in the town outside Stronghold 113 gained a substitute teacher. However, Ren Xiaosu did not give any explanation in class about how he survived despite encountering a lone wolf or wolf pack in the wild. Quest complete. Awarded 1.0 strength. By the end of the day, Ren Xiaosu still could not find an opportunity to use the basic skill duplication scroll he had. He went to school because he liked to gain more knowledge, but the knowledge Zhang Jinglin had would not be very useful for his survival for the time being. The first priority Ren Xiaosu had to consider was still survival. Therefore, if he could not use the skill scroll, it would be impossible for him to prove whether everything in his mind was purely made up by his own imagination. However, Ren Xiaosu kept waiting because he felt that there would still be another quest given. Now he had completed yet another quest, and he was rewarded with a 1.0 strength increase. This was a very straightforward figure, and Ren Xiaosu could feel it in his body. He could feel his muscles bulking up slightly underneath his clothes. This was a real supernatural phenomenon, as no one could suddenly gain additional muscle strength in a mere tenth of a second. With this, Ren Xiaosu was quite sure that his mind palace was indeed a unique type of skill. This made Ren Xiaosu ecstatic. In fact, he should have been overjoyed about it long ago, but he was afraid that none of it would turn out to be real. A frequent hunter must be highly familiar with their body. They had to know how much they could lift and how fast and hard they could punch or stab with a knife. So Ren Xiaosu immediately evaluated his newfound strength. If the average male adult had a strength rating of 3.0, then Ren Xiaosu used to have a strength rating of 2.5. As he was only 17 years old, it was quite normal for him to be weaker than an adult. He could survive in this town all these years not because of his strength, but because he was ruthless, alert, and calm enough. As his strength surpassed that of the average male adults, this meant that his chance of survival in this wasteland increased by a large amount. After school, Yan Liuyuan excitedly said, "Bro, now that you've become the substitute teacher, maybe you'll replace Mr. Zhang as our town's teacher in the future." Ren Xiaosu paused. "Indeed, that seems likely." Mr. Zhang also started off as a substitute teacher. It was only after the old teacher passed away that he took over teaching at school. Yet, everyone in town knows that whoever becomes the substitute teacher will likely take over at the school someday. Think about it. Mr. Zhang allowed you into the classroom to attend the lessons and even made you the substitute teacher. He's definitely thinking of letting you replace him in the future. Yan Liuyuan smiled and said, "If the people in town learn about it, they will have to treat us with more respect next time." That might not be the case. Ren Xiaosu thought and said, "I'm guessing it's only because he hopes to get more cigarettes to smoke." Yan Liuyuan stared at Ren Xiaosu. "Bro, are you being serious? Actually, it's not a bad idea if I really do become the school teacher." Ren Xiaosu said, "When I get the position, I'll give it up to you. In that way, you'll end up becoming the school teacher instead, right?" Ren Xiaosu had really never thought about becoming a school teacher, but it was not because he despised the profession. If he had despised it, he wouldn't think of handing the position to Yan Liuyuan. Instead, he felt that he was not suitable for this profession at all. If he really had no chance to enter the stronghold at some point in the future, then the wilderness would be the only place left where he could truly belong. Ren Xiaosu was imagining a future where he handed the schoolteacher position to Yan Liuyuan as they walked, but he did not notice Yan Liuyuan slowing down. Looking at Ren Xiaosu's back, Yan Liuyuan experienced an indescribable feeling. This young man's hand was still wrapped in bandages, and even though he had a sharp tongue, he would always leave the best for him. When Ren Xiaosu turned around and realized that Yan Liuyuan had fallen quite far behind, he barked, "What are you doing? Hurry up! Coming!" Outside the stronghold, a continuous trail of white smoke was billowing out of the factory chimneys into the sky. As the setting sun shone down onto their backs, it was as though they had nothing in life to worry about. On their way back home, Ren Xiaosu and Yan Liuyuan suddenly saw a group of people come out of the stronghold. There were around 14 of them in the group, and half of them were wearing fanciful clothes of all colors, while the other half was made up of people who donned the combat uniform of the private army employed by the overseers of Stronghold 113. It looked like their trip would be accompanied by soldiers, so it was no wonder they dared to head out into a place like the Jing Mountains. These people actually didn't require guides with combat value. They only needed someone who knew the way. However, Ren Xiaosu did not assume the private troops were strong just because they were employed by the overseers of Stronghold 113. In fact, he rarely saw these private troops leaving the stronghold, so it could still lead to serious issues as they might not even have any actual combat experience or seen blood before. Ren Xiaosu saw some of the private troops smoking filtered cigarettes, which were rarely seen in town. A light whiff of cigarette smoke drifted over. Ren Xiaosu could distinctly smell a weird odor. He remembered old Wang mentioning that many of the cigarettes given out by the factories had addictive substances added into them to give people a high. Ren Xiaosu was puzzled why the private troops would smoke something like that when their profession required them to keep a clear mind. He had witnessed people go crazy from smoking these cigarettes, and the private troops only seemed to be smoking the better quality ones. Slowly, a crowd in town gathered. This was because these people had such clean faces that it sharply contrasted the faces of those in town. Bro, is water so abundant in the stronghold that they can wash their faces every day? Yan Liuyuan blinked with a shimmer in his eyes. There's no need to envy them. The grease on our faces acts as a protective layer for our skin, Ren Xiaosu consoled without actually trying. But then he noticed a unique presence among that group of people. There was a girl wearing a cap so low he could not tell how old she was. She was dressed in relatively normal clothes that looked loose but fitting. Ren Xiaosu focused on her because it felt like an encounter with a beast in the wild the moment he saw her. Something was fishy about these people, and Ren Xiaosu trusted his intuition. Ren Xiaosu and Yan Liuyuan stopped in their tracks, watching from afar. They vaguely knew that this group of people was making inquiries about something with Old Wang from the grocery store. They could hear Old Wang saying loudly, "If y'all are going to the Jing Mountains, you must look for Ren Xiaosu. Without him, you definitely can't pass through. Besides, there are also wolves out there in the wilderness. Might I suggest that you don't take that route?" A soldier in the private army sneered, "Those wolves will be scared off when they hear our gunshots. Why would we need to worry about them?" Ren Xiaosu was taken aback. So the wolves were actually afraid of gunshots? This was probably due to the natural instincts of such wild animals. As he had never seen a firearm before, he wasn't sure if the other party was telling the truth. However, some doubts still remained. Another member of the private army asked, "Who is Ren Xiaosu? We don't care how skillful he is at combat as long as he knows the way." "Oh, Ren Xiaosu is well known for being the best hunter in town. He knows most of the routes, so it'll be perfectly fine if you get him to lead the way." Old Wang smiled and said, "Take my word for it, he's definitely the right choice. But there's something wrong with that kid's head." Having heard all this, Ren Xiaosu turned around and led Yan Liuyuan away. "Is Old Wang's son in your class too? That fat kid?" Yan Liuyuan gasped at him. "Bro, you shouldn't involve his family members." Ren Xiaosu frowned as he had wanted to steer clear of this issue. However, he never expected that Old Wang would deliberately recommend himself to this mysterious band. When Ren Xiaosu came back in the evening, he heard that a man working at the rubber factory had been stabbed to death after returning from work. It was said that someone learned about that man's habit of saving money, so someone got evil intentions. The people in town liked living together to look out for each other. Friends, brothers, and couples stayed together and took turns to keep watch throughout the night. In a way, this gave them a better sense of security. This was also how Ren Xiaosu and Yan Liuyuan teamed up together at the beginning. But some people fell victim to the people they partnered with. The assailants were often short-sighted as they did not realize that after harming their partners, no one would ever trust them again. The assailants who ended up alone this way would usually come to a bad end. Ren Xiaosu sat in his shack and unwrapped the bandage from his hand. He frowned when he saw the condition of the wound. The flesh around it was red and swollen. This was a sign of inflammation. When he looked up and saw Yan Liuyuan walking over, he hurriedly rewrapped the bandage around his hand. "Bro, how's your injury?" Yan Liuyuan asked. "It's fine," Ren Xiaosu calmly said. "I don't believe you." "Let me have a look," Yan Liuyuan said as he tried to remove the bandage that Ren Xiaosu had just rewrapped. "I said that I'm fine." Ren Xiaosu pushed Yan Liuyuan away. "If it gets bad, I'll go and buy medicine." "Don't lie to me. You tried to endure it the previous time," Yan Liuyuan said in agony. Ren Xiaosu sighed. "Don't worry. I won't treat my life as a joke." In nature, predators didn't usually go hunting on a whim because they understood one principle: if they got injured even slightly, it could spell death. If even animals could understand this, how could Ren Xiaosu not? Bro, there are 2 potatoes hidden under the chair. Oh, there are even 3 pills here too. Aren't these the anti-inflammatory pills that you wanted to buy today? They look just like the ones we saw at the store." Yan Liuyuan was surprised. Did you put them there? No. Ren Xiaosu shook his head as he looked at the 3 pills. These sure are anti-inflammatory pills. Then big sister Xiaohu must have been the one who put them there. She was the only one I told about your injury. Yan Liuyuan grinned as he handed a potato to Ren Xiaosu. Big sister Xiaohu is so good to you. Why don't you marry her? Ren Xiaosu did a double take. You really changed your stance quickly, hey? When she gives us something to eat, you praise her. But when there's nothing, you start bad-mouthing her. Hee hee. Yan Liuyuan chomped on the potato noisily. They usually wouldn't get any dinner. Ren Xiaosu said that one had to eat a hearty breakfast and a full lunch, but eating at night was bad for the body. This was a saying passed down from before the cataclysm. Actually, Ren Xiaosu knew the reason for not eating any supper in the present was due to the fact that they were poor. Bro Ren Xiaosu turned around. He suddenly noticed that Yan Liuyuan had his head down and sounded a little sad. He asked, "What's wrong? Do you still remember when you came back here after getting attacked by a wolf pack last year? Someone secretly gave us some medicine that ended up helping you survive the ordeal," Yan Liuyuan said. "Of course I remember. I've always been trying to find out who that person was," Ren Xiaosu said. "Big sister Xiaohu probably also gave us those pills." Yan Liuyuan said, "The hiding spot of the pills is exactly the same." Ren Xiaosu got lost in thought. All of a sudden, Ren Xiaosu heard footsteps coming from outside. There were a lot of people. It was very rare for people to travel on the streets of the town at night. But Ren Xiaosu had already guessed who they were and what their motive was. The reason why the band needed to go via the Jing Mountains this time was just as Ren Xiaosu had predicted. The soldiers of the private army were indeed on another mission. Stronghold 113's overseers had found some information that proved that the Jing Mountains were actually formed after a severe tectonic movement of the Earth's plates, so this could mean that something from before the cataclysm could still be found there. The group had learned about Ren Xiaosu from Old Wang's grocery store. Although they had some hesitations over his mental illness, they asked some other sources as well, and almost everyone felt that Ren Xiaosu was the best candidate to act as their guide. Some of them even wondered what was so great about this Ren Xiaosu that made him so well known in town. Driven by curiosity, they continued making further inquiries. Finally, they got an ambivalent answer. Ren Xiaosu seemed to be the only person around here to have survived an attack by wolves and still make it back to town alive. Last year, when Ren Xiaosu returned to town after a hunting session, he was almost at death's door. His body was bleeding from the wounds that the wolves had inflicted on him with their claws. No matter how vicious the people in town were, they would not do something bad to a dying youth. Everyone looked on with indifference from the sidelines. Even though everyone thought that Ren Xiaosu would surely die that night, he unexpectedly pulled through and even lived well until now. The band members were interested in learning how that youth had managed to survive. Old Wang smiled and said that it was entirely because of Yan Liuyuan, who went door to door to beg for food on his knees. In the end, Ren Xiaosu survived. It even seemed like someone had given him some medicine, but no one knew who it was. Everyone in town knew that Ren Xiaosu had survived through that ordeal, but it also left him with a sickness in the head from that day onwards. By the way, Wang Fugui, a person from the group said to the accompanying Old Wang, "What do you mean by there's something wrong with his head?" "It's nothing. I was just saying." Old Wang said with a grin as wrinkles appeared on his face, "It's not a big deal. It's not anything serious. Look, his place is right ahead." Old Wang only dared to tread the streets at night if he was tagging along with these important people who hailed from the stronghold. At this moment, he deliberately spoke in a louder voice as though he purposely wanted to let the townspeople know that he, Old Wang, had a fantastic relationship with these important people of the stronghold. "Xiaosu, hurry out. You have VIPs, Old Wang shouted with a laugh. Suddenly, the shack's curtain door was thrown aside. Ren Xiaosu happily grasped old Wang's hands and said to him, "Congratulations! Father and child are both fine. The baby weighs 3.24 kilograms. Old Wang was confused, as were the band and the soldiers of the private army. A band member pointed at Ren Xiaosu and looked at Old Wang. How can you call this all right when he's so mentally ill? Besides, what the hell did he mean by father and child are both fine? Wasn't it supposed to be mother and child are both fine?" That band member said angrily, "Wang Fugui, do you know what the consequences of lying to us are? Is this what you call all right?" As soon as he finished speaking, the band members turned around and left. They had had some expectations for the legendary Ren Xiaosu, but in the end, they found out that he was just a lunatic. No wonder the people in town said that there was something wrong with Ren Xiaosu's head. Didn't what they say turn out to be true? The band member did not bother listening to his explanation. "Wang Fugui, I'm giving you 6 hours to get me a suitable candidate. Even if there's nothing wrong with this kid, we won't be using him. We'll be setting off at dawn, so don't screw up our plans." Ren Xiaosu stood happily at the shack's entrance and watched the commotion as though he had nothing to do with it. But unexpectedly, the girl wearing the cap turned around and looked at him. Ren Xiaosu suddenly had a feeling that he had been figured out. He could not even see the expression of the girl under her cap, yet he felt his heart throb for some reason. Ren Xiaosu subconsciously activated and used his skill duplication scroll. A voice intoned from the palace, "One of the target's skills will be randomly copied." Randomly copied. Randomly copied target's firearms skill. Do you want to learn it? Yes. Seeing the skill duplication scroll disappear, Ren Xiaosu thought that if he did not learn it, it would have gone to waste. Learning successful. You've mastered the advanced firearms proficiency. Wait a minute, didn't I get a basic scroll? How did I master advanced firearms proficiency? Shouldn't I learn a skill at the basic level at most? Ren Xiaosu wondered in his mind. There are only 2 types of skill duplication scrolls. The first type is the basic skill duplication scroll, which you can use to learn any skill advanced and lower. The second type of scroll is the master skill duplication scroll, which you can use to learn a master level skill, provided you've also attained the advanced level of the skill. There is also the chance of copying a target's superpowers, answered the voice from the palace. Ren Xiaosu was stunned to learn that he could also duplicate another's superpowers. He then remembered the girl and asked, "Can you tell me the level of that girl's firearms skill?" "Yes, this information can be revealed if it's a target you've learned from." "What is the level of her firearms skill proficiency?" "Master." Perfect. The basic skill duplication scroll allowed the user to learn a random basic or advanced skill of the target. Meanwhile, the master skill duplication scroll allowed for a master level skill to be learned, provided that particular skill was in the advanced level. There was even a chance of learning the other party's superpower. These levels were entirely judged by the palace itself. Although the palace mentioned something about a success chance, Ren Xiaosu got a little excited at the possibility of learning other people's superpowers. Ren Xiaosu and Yan Liuyuan had once discussed whether some superpowers were superior to others. Some people were born fighters while others were born a little weaker. A person like Ren Xiaosu, who needed to survive in the wilderness, would feel that an offensive superpower was more powerful. However, Yan Liuyuan's skill depended on the element of luck, so he couldn't partake in battles. Therefore, Ren Xiaosu was insistent in his belief that there were only different types of superpowers, none was superior to another. But now, a skill that could copy someone else's skills? Just how superior was that? However, Ren Xiaosu was puzzled about that girl wearing a cap. When Ren Xiaosu received the advanced firearms proficiency, a large amount of firearms knowledge was channeled into his mind. It was as though the knowledge had been integrated into him. He gained an instinctive feel for the subject. What he possessed was not only the knowledge of all the different types and models of firearms, their disassembly, maintenance, and usage, but also a near instinctive feel for aiming them. Ren Xiaosu even knew how much recoil each type of gun had. If he was handed a gun right now, as long as it was covered by the advanced firearms knowledge that he had gained, he would be no different from a professional who had trained for years. Regarding accuracy, getting a score of 9.5 and above at a range of 100 meters seemed to be the standard for the advanced firearms proficiency. This surprised Ren Xiaosu a little, but not to the extent of being ecstatic yet. After all, he did not have a gun in his hand. What shocked him even more was that his mind palace had evaluated the girl's firearms skill as perfect. Ren Xiaosu couldn't imagine how amazing the master-level skill was, much less think about what he could do if he perfected the skill. Someone like her was in a band? It seemed that those soldiers of the private army and band members were not aware that such a terror existed in their group. Ren Xiaosu realized earlier that everyone treated her as a normal member of the group. The girl had probably not expected that Ren Xiaosu would use such a mysterious method to gain access to her secret. He made a wise decision to get out of joining this group for their mission. At the same time, Ren Xiaosu derived great pleasure from finding out about someone else's secret. "Bro, why do you keep staring at her back?" Yan Liuyuan asked as he stuck his head out of the shack. Ren Xiaosu grinned from ear to ear. He turned around and looked at Yan Liuyuan. Just when he was about to behave like an elder brother with authority, the curtain door from next door was lifted. A woman asked, "Who's back?" "Where?" Yan Liuyuan and Ren Xiaosu were stunned. The person who came out from the shack next door turned out to be Xiaoyu. Yan Liuyuan wondered, "Big sister Xiaoyu, why are you in the shack next door?" Xiaoyu combed her hair and said with a smile, "I moved here and will be your neighbor from now on." "Where's the family of 3 who were living here?" Yan Liuyuan asked, "Where ve they gone?" "I switched houses with them," Xiaoyu explained. Yan Liuyuan pulled Ren Xiaosu aside and whispered, "Bro, big sister Xiaoyu has made a big investment this time. She used to live in a brick house." Ren Xiaosu did not say anything as he lowered his head and went straight back into the shack. Yan Liuyuan smiled at Xiaoyu before withdrawing his head back into the shack as well. "Bro, you're still a virgin, right?" Yan Liuyuan asked. Ren Xiaosu stared at Yan Liuyuan and said, "Liuyuan, since you're not young anymore, I wish to educate you about this." Yan Liuyuan sat bolt upright and turned serious. "All right, bro, ask me if there's anything you don't understand." Before Yan Liuyuan could finish, he was kicked to the ground by Ren Xiaosu. But Yan Liuyuan did not get angry. He just kept laughing. "You've really grown bolder, hey?" Ren Xiaosu laid the bed and said, "Do your best to not provoke big sister Xiaoyu, and don't try to matchmake us. We can't even handle ourselves, so where will we get the time to worry about others?" "Okay," Yan Liuyuan replied obediently. "But she gave us some potatoes and medicine, and she's also very concerned about you. Are you really going to ignore her?" Ren Xiaosu thought for a while before saying, "The most important things about being human are to be honest and have a clear conscience. But if we ever feel a pang in our conscience, we must convince ourselves that it isn't so." Yan Liuyuan was confused. When Ren Xiaosu started speaking, Yan Liuyuan got ready to get lectured by him. But by the time Ren Xiaosu finished, Yan Liuyuan couldn't be more dumbfounded. Perhaps this was just how Ren Xiaosu was. In an era like this, a person like Ren Xiaosu would probably survive better than most people. However, Yan Liuyuan did not mind at all the kind of person Ren Xiaosu was. Ren Xiaosu's constant fussing and cautiousness was all due to the lessons and experience he gained through the many scars that he received in the past. However, Yan Liuyuan knew that Ren Xiaosu still kept some of the things he wanted to say filed away. The way. Ren Xiaosu and Yan Liuyuan looked at each other and frowned. They heard Xiaoyu say, "I don't provide that kind of service anymore." Haha. It was as though that person with a rough voice had heard something funny. If you don't do that kind of thing anymore, how are you going to survive? Who will supply you with cigarettes in the future? Let go of me. Xiaosu sounded angry. The two of them had apparently come to blows. Something ripped. It sounded like someone's clothes had been torn. When Yan Liuyuan turned to look at Ren Xiaosu, he saw that Ren Xiaosu was still frowning. Then he said in a whisper, "Bro, go and help her." Ren Xiaosu stood up and untied the bone knife from his calf. Raising it aloft, he walked out of the shack. Right at this moment, the keys of the brass typewriter within Ren Xiaosu's mind palace started typing words onto the leather parchment. The voice from the magnificent palace intoned at the same time, "Quest, help," he sneered in his mind and interrupted the voice from the palace. "Even without this quest, I'll still help her." From the time that Ren Xiaosu came out of his shack holding the knife, it took just 2 seconds for him to rush up to that man. Ren Xiaosu did not say any threatening words like "let her go" or "touch her again if you dare," because he knew that any unnecessary actions could lead to failure. All he needed to do was to use the simplest solution to solve the simplest problem. When Ren Xiaosu's slim but strong figure came sprinting over like a cheetah, the man promptly drew a knife from his waist and slashed at Ren Xiaosu. Everyone in town would carry a self-defense weapon on their person. The man started to laugh mockingly in his mind because he was almost a head taller than Ren Xiaosu. Further, he was holding an actual metal weapon, not just some bone knife. However, in the next moment, his ridiculing laughter halted. It was common knowledge that a metal weapon would reign over a bone knife even though the wild beasts had gained a skeletal structure as strong as steel. But being as strong as steel did not mean that it was steel. Melee weapons were not banned in town, but it was almost impossible to obtain a good metal weapon. Even though some industries were slowly catching back up to the standards before the cataclysm, they were still limited by a lack of resources at present. Ren Xiaosu appeared before the man in a flash. His sprint had started off with his left leg hitting the ground while the muscles in his right leg tensed up and supported his body weight. Both of his feet now gripped the ground as he concentrated all of his strength there for maximum push-off. Then, like an electric current, he let this strength surge through him from his waist up and into his arms. Ren Xiaosu swung his knife diagonally upwards so hard that he almost slashed a crack right into the darkness of the night, cutting a gully across the land. Clang! The bone knife and the metal weapon collided with each other. The onlookers who were secretly watching were astonished when they saw the two knives break in half at the same time. They had only expected the bone knife to break. In that instant, Ren Xiaosu threw the bone knife aside without hesitation as the man was caught by surprise. This action of throwing the knife away was done in a swift motion after the swing. It was as though Ren Xiaosu had expected it to break. It was obvious he had other plans from the start. He grabbed the man's wrist and punched him hard with his other hand right in his axillary nerve 1. The man tried to break free from his grasp but suddenly realized that the young man was much stronger than him. How could this be? Wasn't his opponent young? This young man probably only stood as tall as his neck. However, when the man noticed the tough muscles around Ren Xiaosu's neck, he realized that it was pure strength. The axillary nerve ran about 3 centimeters around the upper arm and the armpit, but the punch did not need to land precisely because the size of the fist was enough to cover any deviation. This area is one of the human body's weaknesses. When the axillary nerve receives heavy trauma 1, neuropathy 2 can occur. Considering the nerve as an electrical cable, such a trauma can cause the axillary nerve to generate an uncontrolled release of electrical signals that can interfere with accurate signal transmission. When the brain gets overloaded by such signals, it will send out a pain signal. The signal overload also causes the limbs to receive a confused jumble of signals. The body then begins to secrete large amounts of calcium and potassium ions in reaction, and the resulting electrical overload is enough to paralyze the entire body for a second. The man let out a scream as he fell to the ground, his limbs twitching uncontrollably. When he finally realized what was going on, he did not have any strength left to take on Ren Xiaosu. Ren Xiaosu stood silently beside him and looked like he was thinking about something. The man panted for a while before begging for mercy. I won't bear a grudge. Please let me go. I'll forget about today's incident. Any smart person would know that their life was in the hands of Ren Xiaosu. So he shouldn't hoot and holler rudely and unreasonably, but to leave it for later instead. Ren Xiaosu looked at Xiaoyu. Who is he? He's a foreman of the coal mine. He was also the one who led the group that stabbed a person to death in town last night. Since he heard that man had a habit of saving money, he started getting ideas since he had gambling debts. Xiaoyu revealed what the man had told her last night when he boasted about the incident to her. Ren Xiaosu walked over to the road and picked up the man's metal weapon. Then he walked back next to the man. As he stared down at him in contempt, he estimated there to be at most 4 to 5 seconds before the man would regain his mobility. Suddenly, the voice from the palace that had been silent for a while intoned again. Quest, set your foe free. But just as the voice from the palace started trailing off, Ren Xiaosu crouched down and jabbed the metal weapon into the man's stomach. The sharp sound of the metal weapon tearing through leather and skin left every onlooker or anyone eavesdropping with a tingling sensation on their scalps. Then the man started bleeding profusely. You have around 3 minutes. If you can reach the town's clinic in time and get it stitched up, there might still be a chance for you to survive, Ren Xiaosu said calmly. When the man heard that, he stopped caring about the pain. He immediately got up and ran towards the clinic without another word. Quest complete. Awarded basic skill duplication scroll. Quest complete. Awarded basic skill duplication scroll. Due to the loss of your weapon, a special side quest has been activated. Ren Xiaosu was stunned even before he finished listening. The first quest should be related to him saving Xiaoyu, so he could understand why it was successfully completed. He did not expect for the second quest to also be considered complete. How the hell does this palace make judgments? Yan Liuyuan asked from beside him. Bro, you're letting him go just like that? What if he recovers after getting stitched up at the clinic and comes back to take revenge on you? He's not a good person at all. Ren Xiaosu stared into the night. As if that shitty clinic in town knows how to stitch someone up. Bro, seeing how you're still so ruthless, I can rest easy. Because of this, Ren Xiaosu was relieved that the quest was considered complete even though that man was definitely going to die. Moreover, even if he did not die, that rusty metal knife was still a potent weapon for causing tetanus. Even if he could survive the injury, he might as well be dead. Although that man had a metal weapon, he could only afford to get the cheapest type. Ren Xiaosu would probably not have broken the knife otherwise. A person like Ren Xiaosu had a personal set of principles that he would not stray from. Even though he had a superpower now, it would not change his way of doing things. If he had to change, it would due to his own free will. No one else could make him do it. Therefore, it seemed that the criteria for whether a quest was complete was not that strict. What the palace really cared about was the attitude that Ren Xiaosu displayed. At this moment, some people in the shacks along the road started whispering. In fact, over the years, they learned how ruthless Ren Xiaosu was. Nonetheless, they were shocked by today's events. This was because the physiques of the two combatants today were too different. Besides, the strength displayed by Ren Xiaosu was by no means inferior to the foreman's. In fact, he was probably even stronger than the other guy. It was unbelievable. Someone muttered softly in one of the shacks, "See, I said not to provoke him." Ren Xiaosu went to pick up the bone knife that had accompanied him for over a year. Its lifespan had finally come to an end. He turned around and looked at Xiaoyu. In the night, Xiaoyu looked a little delicate. Xiaoyu was, in fact, 8 years older than Ren Xiaosu, but right now, it looked more like she was younger than Ren Xiaosu by 8 years. Ren Xiaosu bluntly asked, "Can you quit smoking?" Xiaoyu nodded vigorously. "Those things aren't that addictive since they've only added a tiny amount of poppy pods to it." Old Wang mentioned that the proportion of added substance is very low, so it's still possible to quit if you really want to, Ren Xiaosu said as he walked to the door of Xiao's shack and crouched down. He thrust half of his white bone knife ruthlessly into the mud, leaving only a small portion of it above ground. The onlookers who had some unscrupulous thoughts for Xiao immediately dropped the idea. In the town, this half of the bone knife now symbolized a certain someone's will. No one was willing to make any rash decisions and end up offending the ruthless Ren Xiaosu. Ren Xiaosu turned around and said to Xiao, "But there's something I want to make clear. Although I'm very handsome, it's impossible between us." Xiao looked stunned. "I've only seen you as a little brother." It was Ren Xiaosu's turn to be stunned. "Ha ha ha ha, this is so awkward." Ren Xiaosu immediately led Yan Liuyuan back to their shack. He stared at Yan Liuyuan as they walked back. "It's all your fault for always babbling nonsense about that to me." Yan Liuyuan surreptitiously turned around and winked at Xiao. When Xiao saw Yan Liuyuan's face, she started laughing. All her unhappy feelings seemed to vanish into thin air. She squatted on the ground and stared at that half of the bone knife for a long time before heading to sleep with a smile on her face. Meanwhile, Ren Xiaosu closed his eyes and took a detailed observation of the inside of the palace. He also checked out what the typewriter had typed onto the leather parchment. A side quest? How interesting! Although it was used to learn a random skill, and he might end up learning something useless, the advanced firearms proficiency he learned had already given him a sweet taste of things to come. However, what attracted Ren Xiaosu to come to explore the palace was not these two skill duplication scrolls, but what the palace had mentioned at the end, a side quest. Since it was only a side quest, then it should not be something too important or was something that took a brief amount of time to complete. However, Ren Xiaosu clearly heard what the voice from the palace had said at that time, "Due to the loss of your weapon, a special," so this quest had something to do with a weapon, right? In the long time that Ren Xiaosu had been going out into the wilderness, he understood well the importance of having a good weapon. Old Wang once bought a steel knife and wanted to resell it to Ren Xiaosu, but Ren Xiaosu couldn't afford it even after trying to earn and save money for half a year. In the end, Old Wang sold that knife to a manager at the chemical plant. A factory manager was usually selected by the stronghold from among the refugees to take a leadership role. In a way, they could be considered people who enjoyed the benefits as followers of those in power within the stronghold. At that time, Ren Xiaosu thought how great it would be if he could get his hands on a good weapon soon. Then he would not have to lie in the wilderness every day to wait to catch sparrows. It was getting much harder to wait for the birds. It was tormenting him. If he got his hands on a knife, he could totally go out and hunt for some other wild animals such as rabbits, field mice, bamboo rats, etc. Yes, even rabbits were considered wild animals now. Rabbits in the wilderness would not attack humans, but they were very strong and could reach the height of an adult's shins. Ren Xiaosu once dug a trap that was about 2 meters deep and a rabbit fell into it. However, when Ren Xiaosu approached it, the rabbit hopped straight out of the pit and even kicked him in the head while in midair. Ren Xiaosu nearly suffered a brain hemorrhage as a result. Ren Xiaosu looked at the leather parchment in the typewriter. "Due to the loss of your weapon, a special side quest has been activated. Collect 100 sincere gratitudes to unlock a new weapon. In addition, you can use the gratitudes gained in exchange for items." Ren Xiaosu looked bewildered. Why does this side quest feel so weird? Collect gratitudes? And they had to be sincere too? It should be easy for him to collect thanks, but this was made difficult by the fact that they needed to be sincere. Besides, thanks could even be used as currency? More importantly, what kinds of items could it purchase? He continued reading the leather parchment and was astonished to see new words appearing on it from time to time. Gratitude received from Li Xiao, +1. Ren Xiaosu was pleased to know that he had not saved an ingrate. There shouldn't be any mistakes with the palace's judgment. At this moment, he noticed another line of words in fine print on the leather parchment weapon unlock, 1/100. Ren Xiaosu felt unfortunate. If only he were required to collect negative emotions instead, that would have been great. He knew that he could easily cause the entire townspeople to max out on their negativity for him with no effort at all. But he would have to make do with what the palace needed him to do. Now, Ren Xiaosu was looking forward to getting his hands on his future weapon. An item given by the mysterious palace would definitely not be inferior. Ren Xiaosu suddenly opened his eyes and looked at Yan Liuyuan. Liuyuan, say thank you to me. Yan Liuyuan was stunned. Bro, don't be like this. You're making me a little scared. What are you scared of? Ren Xiaosu snapped. Hurry up and say it. Yan Liuyuan thought for a while and said, thank you for taking care of me all this while. Gratitude received from Yan Liuyuan, +1. Ren Xiaosu was overjoyed. Is it this simple? Come on, thank me a few more times, Ren Xiaosu said. Yan Liuyuan suddenly felt at a loss for words. Thank you. Ren Xiaosu was disappointed this time. It looked like he could not keep getting thanked repeatedly. The main focus was still on the gratitude needing to be sincere. He raised his head in dissatisfaction and looked at Yan Liuyuan. You're not being sincere. No, that's not right. Your emotions are not correct, say it again. It's still not right. You have to let your emotions build up. Come, yes, this is the expression. Try it again, sincerity can work wonders. Try again, put more emotion into the way you say it. Yan Liuyuan nearly collapsed. He said with a dry mouth, bro, this is your skill? It feels like your skill really takes a toll on the voice. On this very night, Ren Xiaosu insisted on testing the gratitude system with Yan Liuyuan throughout the night. In the end, he still only received one sincere gratitude from him. But with this gratitude, he now had 2 token coins in total. The token had a heart engraved on it with line of words on the reverse side, a grateful heart, thankful to you for accompanying me in life and giving me the courage to be myself. A grateful heart, thankful for fate. As flowers bloom and wither, I remain appreciative. Ren Xiaosu smacked his lips, thinking that it flowed well. At this moment, the showroom cabinets in the palace that were originally shrouded in a black mist saw some changes. On the left side of the typewriter, the black mist finally dissipated from one of the cabinets and revealed something within. A vending machine. Ren Xiaosu was stunned for quite a while. He wondered what its function was since this was the first time he saw it. He hadn't come across something like it before in the outside world, as no such thing existed in the current day. However, he knew what the words on the vending machine said, coin slot. There were no other options on it. Since there was only a coin slot available, he did not need to think further and just inserted a token into it. Clink! The token with a heart engraving was slotted into the machine. Then it started to activate with a rumble. After that, a small bottle about the size of a palm rolled out. Ren Xiaosu took it out and had a look. The vial was only labeled with the word drug. Come on, you should at least tell me what illness this is for, right? Ren Xiaosu hesitated for a moment. When he thought about it and opened his eyes, he was holding the vial of medicine in his hand. But when that thought vanished, the vial of medicine disappeared as well. Yan Liuyuan was stunned at the sight. Bro, are you performing magic? Ren Xiaosu ignored him. He decisively pulled off the cloth bandaging the wound on his hand to reveal an already infected wound. Extravasated blood had surrounded the wound for quite a while now, and interstitial fluid was continuously flowing out. Ren Xiaosu knew that if he did not apply medicine to it in time, the wound would fester, and he would go down with a fever soon after. When Yan Liuyuan saw this, he immediately stood up and walked out. Ren Xiaosu pulled him back. What are you doing? I'll go and buy medicine for you, Yan Liuyuan stubbornly said. No need for that. Ren Xiaosu picked up the vial and swabbed a little bit of the ointment in it with his index finger before applying it carefully onto his wound. This vial of ointment was not large and was even very shallow. It looked like it was probably just enough for 3 dosages. After applying it, Ren Xiaosu felt a little regretful. The vial was only labeled with the word drug, but what if it turned out to be poisonous? However, his worries did not come to pass. After applying the ointment onto the wound, Ren Xiaosu immediately felt the initial burning sensation in the wound disappear. The anti-inflammatory medicine given by Xiao had been saved since he no longer needed it. Anti-inflammatory medicine must be taken for 3 days straight, while this ointment immediately worked wonders. An anti-inflammatory pill was worth 200 yuan each, and Ren Xiaosu roughly estimated that if he were to use this vial of ointment in place of the anti-inflammatory medicine, its value would be easily worth millions. Then Ren Xiaosu spun around and looked at Yan Liuyuan. He firmly demanded, "Help me think. What can I do to quickly gain other people's gratitude?" It was just that Yan Liuyuan felt that Ren Xiaosu had used the phrase down to earth in the wrong sense. "Bro, I think that you can go out and perform some good deeds," Yan Liuyuan said. "Wouldn't that be the most direct method to gain other people's sincere gratitude? For example, you can hand out food to hungry people or give out water to the thirsty." Ren Xiaosu glared at him. "Am I such a person? If I give them food and water, what would I have left to eat and drink? And what will you have to eat and drink?" Yan Liuyuan said resentfully. "Then, bro, please don't expect to get any sincere gratitude from anyone." No, Ren Xiaosu rejected Yan Liuyuan's statement. There must be other ways. Since a long time ago, Ren Xiaosu knew that the current era was not kind to humans. Or rather, it was also very difficult for humans to treat other humans with true kindness. There was once a beggar in town, and a kind-hearted girl would bring him something to eat every day. But after the girl got married, she no longer sent him any more food. The beggar pursued the girl to her home and asked her why she did not give him food anymore. In the end, he was thrown out by her family as that girl's husband was not as kind as her. Everyone thought that the matter would end there. Some people in town even purposely went to mock the beggar and wanted to see when he would starve to death. But on that very night, the beggar made his way back to where the girl lived and murdered the couple. Ren Xiaosu always felt that there was a much greater philosophy in life behind these events. But as he was still young back then, he only had a vague understanding that he had to be careful when sleeping at night. The next morning, a hubbub clamored from the streets. Ren Xiaosu got up and lifted up the curtain door to have a look outside. He was surprised to see the people from the band making their way out of town with an acquaintance next to them. That man was also an experienced hunter in town who was very skilled. He appeared quite happy as he walked beside the band members. It was as though he finally had the opportunity to get to know important people from the stronghold. In fact, many successful people in town also started off this way. It seemed that whoever the important people from the stronghold picked to do their bidding would lead to those people living prosperous lives. And the prosperous life would mean opening a grocery store like Wang Fugui had done. Ren Xiaosu had once asked Wang Fugui why he always fawned upon those who came out from the stronghold. Surely not everyone in the stronghold were people of importance, right? At that time, Wang Fugui gave a mysterious smile and said, "There are indeed poor and rich people in the stronghold as well, but only the important people are allowed to freely enter or leave the place." Based on what Wang Fugui had said, it would mean that it was also very difficult for the poor to come out from the stronghold. The towering walls did not only stop people outside of the stronghold from getting in. It also stopped those on the inside from getting out. Wang Fugui was also following alongside the band members. As he walked past Ren Xiaosu, he kept staring at him. Finally, he whispered to him, "You ingrate, I recommended such a wonderful job to you and you rejected it. Do you know something? I heard the band say that they intend to find a capable guide to bring into the stronghold so that they will have someone to guide them whenever there is a need." Ren Xiaosu was stunned as he did not expect it to be an opportunity like this. If he knew that it would turn out this way, would he still reject the opportunity? Yes, because even though he would be brought into the stronghold, Yan Liuyuan would definitely not be allowed to go in with him. How could he leave Yan Liuyuan on the outside by himself? Yan Liuyuan whispered, "Bro, why don't you talk to those people from the band again? You're much more capable than that old Lu. He always returns home empty-handed from his hunts. Besides, he's never dared to venture too far out of town either. Stop spouting nonsense." Ren Xiaosu frowned as it was impossible for him to not regret or feel tempted by the opportunity. However, he had already made his decision. "Let's go, I'm sending you to school." When Ren Xiaosu and Yan Liuyuan reached the school, Zhang Jinglan was already in the classroom cleaning the blackboard. He nearly jumped when he turned around and saw Ren Xiaosu and Yan Liuyuan standing there. They had very deep and dark circles under their eyes that made them look like ghosts. "What happened to the two of you?" Zhang Jinglan asked with some uncertainty. Yan Liuyuan tried to explain. "My brother insisted on." However, before Yan Liuyuan could finish speaking, Ren Xiaosu slapped him upside the head and cut him off. Ren Xiaosu then said, "It's nothing, we just didn't sleep well." "Oh." Zhang Jinglan did not try to pry into their private affairs. He asked, "Have you thought about what you'll be teaching for today's lesson? It will be your first day as the substitute teacher." "Yes, I have." Ren Xiaosu nodded. For most of the day, he would be sitting in the classroom as a student until it was time for the last period in the afternoon when he would take over as the substitute teacher to teach the survival lesson. When it came time for the last period, Zhang Jinglan started worrying about Ren Xiaosu not having any experience in teaching, so he sat down in the back row of the class to give him some support. When Ren Xiaosu walked up to the podium, the class monitor shouted, "All rise." Then, everyone said loudly, "Good afternoon, teacher." To the students, Ren Xiaosu was a unique presence in class. He was their classmate, the oldest one among them, as well as a well-known person in town. So it was a really refreshing experience for them to have Ren Xiaosu teach their class. It was at this moment that Ren Xiaosu suddenly said, "Don't you guys think that it's tough for Mr. Zhang to teach us? We're all allowed to sit down during the lessons, but Mr. Zhang has to stand all day." In such circumstances, how could the students say that it was not tough? As Zhang Jinglan was still around, they could only agree. Then Ren Xiaosu said, "So shouldn't we be showing our gratitude for Mr. Zhang?" "Yes," the students answered in unison. Yan Liuyuan's expression changed as he cheered madly in his mind. "Here it comes." Ren Xiaosu nodded in satisfaction. "Then from now on, there will be no need to say good afternoon, teacher. We will say thank you, teacher instead." Zhang Jinglan was dumbfounded throughout this as he did not understand what Ren Xiaosu was trying to do. "All right, everyone, please sit down. Let's give it a try." Ren Xiaosu said with a smile. "All rise." "Thank you, teacher," the students said in unison again. However, when Ren Xiaosu had an internal look at the typewriter in the palace, he was sorely disappointed. None of these little bastards were actually being sincere when thanking their teacher. Was it so difficult to show sincere gratitude to educators these days? This wouldn't do. He had to come up with another way now that his first attempt had failed. However, failure was not something that Ren Xiaosu was unfamiliar with. Accepting his failures with grace was actually one of his greatest strengths. Ren Xiaosu heard of a saying once, "Life is no bed of roses." What this means is that most of the time, life doesn't go your way. But even so, wouldn't you still have to continue living? Of course. However, he had neglected one problem. While he was very eager to learn and was very thirsty for knowledge, it was because he was born into abnormal times that lacked knowledge. This was what caused him to be so hungry to learn. The more one lacked something, the more one desired it. However, the things that he desired were not necessarily the same as what the students desired. The students who could attend school in such an era were mostly from families with a rather good background. All of them were living with the blessings of their parents. These kids had been attending school for several years now, and the most annoying person to them would be their teacher, since he would make them recite from textbooks and give them homework. During students' teenage years, teachers were their mortal enemy most of the time. Even though Ren Xiaosu was teaching them their favorite survival lesson, the students were far from feeling grateful to him. Ren Xiaosu thought that perhaps with a few more lessons, the students would finally be grateful to him for teaching them. Usually, the school in town would let out at 4 p.m. starting from 6 a.m., the strongholds clock would ring every 2 hours to signal the time. Under normal circumstances, Zhang Jinglin would never prolong his lessons. However, today, in his attempt to gain the gratitude of the students, Ren Xiaosu was teaching them almost all of his experience in wilderness survival. Once he got started, he continued talking all the way until 5 p.m. As it was late autumn, it started getting dark at 5 p.m. The students stared blankly at him and thought to themselves, "This son of a bitch just keeps on fucking going." Even Zhang Jinglin couldn't bear it anymore. He went out to the yard to chop up a cabbage and made dinner. A student who could not stand it any longer, said, "Son of a teacher, if you're not going to end class soon, it'll be dark out, and it won't be safe to be in town." The student was still a little afraid of this person who was well known in town for being ruthless. That was the reason he did not dare to challenge him directly. Ren Xiaosu was taken aback. He thought, instead of showing your gratitude, you're asking the teacher to end class. However, he understood that safety came first. So when Ren Xiaosu saw the sky darkening, he could only helplessly wave his hand and say, "Class dismissed." "Thank you, teacher." "Thank you, teacher." The students started swarming out of class. When two of the students thanked Ren Xiaosu for saying class dismissed, they were truly thankful. If class still didn't get dismissed, it would have become unbearable for them. Ren Xiaosu suddenly noticed 2 more gratitude tokens appear in the palace and was overjoyed. Like he knew what the students were thanking him for. All he felt was that he'd done a great job teaching them. Ren Xiaosu thought to himself, "Looks like my loving efforts have not gone to waste." After such a long lesson, he felt that the students were still actually very grateful to him. Yan Liuyuan said as he pulled a long face, "Can you stop making the lessons run late?" Before Ren Xiaosu could say anything, Zhang Jinglin walked in with a bowl of rice that he was eating from. He controlled his tone and said, "Xiaosu, I know that you're passionate about teaching, but it's bad to make the class stay behind for such a long time. Also, what if you overextend yourself by working too hard?" Ren Xiaosu was having none of it. Was he making the class stay behind? No, he was just ensuring that he would earn the sincere gratitude of the students, which in turn meant making money from them. "No," Ren Xiaosu said righteously, "I'm willing to devote my entire life to the cause of education, so it's fine with me if I have to teach a little longer." Zhang Jinglin coughed, choking at Ren Xiaosu's words. But when he saw Ren Xiaosu behaving like that, he did not bother to argue with him. "All right then." The 2 students who thanked him did not even know that by saying "Thank you, teacher," they had brought a major disaster upon themselves. A proverb for situations like this went, "Loose lips cause trouble." On the way back, Yan Liuyuan was sulking and ignoring Ren Xiaosu. He had originally planned to stroll around town with Ren Xiaosu after school. But in the end, it wasn't to be. When they passed by a pawn shop at the city gate, Yan Liuyuan tugged on Ren Xiaosu's sleeve and pointed at it. Ren Xiaosu was surprised to see Xiaoyuan there. She seemed to be talking to the shopkeeper. Ren Xiaosu led Yan Liuyuan a little bit closer. They could hear Xiaoyu saying to the shopkeeper, "My pair of earrings are very valuable. Can't you give me a little more for them?" The shopkeeper smiled flippantly at Xiaoyu. "Actually, you don't have to pawn it." "Why would you have to?" he shut his mouth before he finished talking because he saw Ren Xiaosu walking towards the pawn shop. Word of last night's incident had already spread all over the town, and everyone knew that Li Xiao was now very close to Ren Xiaosu. It didn't mean that just because this was a survival of the fittest era, everyone would naturally become more ferocious. In fact, every era would always have its fair share of weaklings and ruthless people. And most of the time, those who were ruthless would survive better. The shopkeeper was a weakling, and a weakling feared the strong and would only dare to bully the weak. The person that Ren Xiaosu had killed last night was well known in town as a ruthless person. So Ren Xiaosu had become the most ruthless of the ruthless. The shopkeeper's gaze became shifty as he pretended to drink some water. He wasn't sure if Ren Xiaosu had overheard what he had just said. Ren Xiaosu counted 620 yuan from his pocket and stuffed it into Xiao's hand. You don't have to sell your belongings. This is the money for the 3 anti-inflammatory pills that you gave me last night. As Li Xiao did not have a source of income now, she had no choice but to fritter away her savings. However, Ren Xiaosu could not bear to see her in such a miserable state. Li Xiao wanted to return the money to Ren Xiaosu, but he said, I was already planning to use the money to buy some medicine anyway, so you should keep it. It's not that I'm rejecting your kindness, but there's no need for us to be so polite with each other in the future. Li Xiao was stunned for a while. What do you mean by that? After Ren Xiaosu luckily escaped from the wolves last year, he did not mention to anyone how he made it back alive. However, it was a fact that he only survived because of the medicine given by Li Xiao. Without the antibiotics and anti-inflammatory pills, he would have been dead long ago. Therefore, what he owed to Li Xiao was not just a few pills, but his life. Ren Xiaosu said to Xiao in a serious tone, don't worry. From now on, as long as there's meat for me to eat, I'll make sure there will be soup for you to drink. Yan Liuyuan whispered, Bro, you've said it wrong. Shouldn't all of us be eating meat together? Why, then, has it turned into you eating meat while the rest of us only get soup to drink? Besides, we don't even have any meat at home, oh. Ren Xiaosu nodded and put it another way to Xiao. From now on, as long as I have soup to drink, there will be bowls for you to wash. Yan Liuyuan was confused. Pfft. The shopkeeper who was taking a sip of water did a spit take from nearby. However, Li Xiao did not mind. All right, I'll wash the bowls and do the laundry for you too. When she said this, she did not consider if there would be enough water to go around for all of them. In any case, she agreed to it. The shopkeeper pouted as he looked at the 3 of them walk out. He turned around and said to his shop assistant, don't ever provoke him, you hear? Right when the trio stepped out of the shop, they heard someone shout, Doctor, please save my husband. If he dies, our family won't survive. They saw a middle-aged woman kneeling and kowtowing to the town's only doctor in front of the clinic. However, the doctor sneered. If you don't have any money, what makes you think you can see the doctor? If you save him, our whole family will thank you for your great kindness. The woman sobbed, the old doctor was such a benevolent man when he was still around. As his son, you must also be very benevolent. My father's benevolence was his business. Then the doctor turned around and slammed the clinic's door shut. A man was lying beside the woman, his stomach bleeding non-stop. Ren Xiaosu did not approach them nor be the good Samaritan this time around. In fact, he could tell that the man had already died. He calmly said as he looked on, Liuyuan, remember everything that you've just witnessed. This is reality. The acid rain is coming. Let's hurry back home, Ren Xiaosu said with an impassive expression. The woman was still crying and shouting, but no one cared about them. The man did not look like he had suffered the injury due to an accident. Ren Xiaosu could easily tell that it was a knife wound, so he was sure that the man did not accidentally get injured at the factory but was killed in a fight. When they got back to their shack, the acid rain came and went just as quickly. Yan Liuyuan suddenly said as he sat on the bedroll, "Bro, you want the sincere gratitudes of other people, right? Being a doctor seems like it's an easy way to gain more gratitude. In the past when the old doctor was still around, everyone was always very grateful to him. But I don't suggest you become a doctor. First off, it's very easy for a doctor to get stuck in a dilemma. Second, you don't have any medical skills." Ren Xiaosu turned around and looked at Yan Liuyuan with an expressionless face. "Then what the hell are you blathering about? Wait a moment." Ren Xiaosu suddenly felt that he had missed something. Although he did not have any medical skills, he could learn them. The 2 skill duplication scrolls awarded by his mind palace were still available. By using one of these scrolls, he should be able to learn another person's medical skill, right? At that time, he could start seeing patients, or at least be able to treat Yan Liuyuan or himself if they fell sick or got into accidents. When the old doctor was still around, he would often go out to gather medicinal herbs. Back then, the old doctor had smilingly mentioned to people that even though the beasts were more powerful in the current day, the medicinal herbs had also become more effective. Thus, the old doctor successfully treated many people with his skill in identifying the different types of medicinal herbs and having excellent medical skills. Furthermore, he even sold the medicinal herbs that he gathered at a dirt cheap price. But of course, Ren Xiaosu was not as kind as the old doctor. He only felt that if he should possess such good medical skills, he could better deal with future emergencies, as well as making money on top of that. Usually, Yan Liuyuan would suffer a cold, headache, or fever as a consequence of making a wish. Even though he did not want Yan Liuyuan to face these side effects, what if they were forced by circumstance? "I'm going to be a doctor," Ren Xiaosu said as his eyes shone with an unwavering determination. "Bro, are you alright?" Yan Liuyuan was stunned. "It's not like you have any medical skills, so please don't cause deaths. Although we don't know how to save people, we shouldn't harm them either." Ren Xiaosu feigned a slap upside Yan Liuyuan's head. "You always have so much to say. When have I ever initiated harm upon others?" Ren Xiaosu was making some calculations. If he became a doctor, he would definitely profit and earn a stable income. As the people in town often got injured, going to the doctor for their injuries had become a necessity. He proceeded with his plan immediately. The next day, Ren Xiaosu did not go to school when he awoke. After scarfing down 2 bites of black bread, he went and crouched at the clinic's door and waited for it to open. In the end, the clinic opened late. Ren Xiaosu waited until the afternoon, but the clinic still remained closed in the afternoon. When the strongholds clock rang to signal that it was 2 p.m., the young doctor leisurely opened the door from the inside and stretched himself under the sun. But before he could stretch his entire body, he was startled by the presence of Ren Xiaosu, who was crouching at the entrance. "Are you here to see the doctor? And did you bring any money?" the doctor asked. The doctor did not even bother asking what illness Ren Xiaosu was suffering from. All he recognized was money. Ren Xiaosu said with a grin, "I'm not here to see the doctor. Please carry on with whatever you were doing." The doctor was dumbfounded. "If you're not here to see the doctor, what are you doing squatting at my front door?" Ren Xiaosu silently used one of the skill duplication scrolls in his palace. He saw the skill duplication scroll made from leather parchment spontaneously combust and instantly burn to nothing. One of the target's skills will be randomly copied. Randomly copied target's bragging skill. Do you want to learn it? Ren Xiaosu was dumbfounded on the spot. Why would I learn bragging? He had almost forgotten that the skill duplication scroll could only randomly copy another person's skill for him to learn. It wasn't something that he had control over. But the problem was, why the fuck would you even have a skill like bragging? Something like this can even be considered a skill. You fucking useless piece of shit. Ren Xiaosu gave the doctor a dirty stare and felt that the man was an awfully disgusting person. However, since he was here to steal his occupation, he couldn't possibly be beating him up after trying to do so, right? That wouldn't be cool. The doctor felt a little uncomfortable being stared at. Just as he was about to say something, he finally remembered who Ren Xiaosu was. Ren Xiaosu never came to his clinic to see him. However, both of them had heard about the other. One of them was the only doctor in town, while the other was a well-known ruthless individual. So it was only natural that they knew about each other. As such, the young doctor was terrified. "What are you trying to do?" the doctor asked meekly. "Are you always bragging when you have nothing to do?" Ren Xiaosu snapped at him. The young doctor was dumbfounded. What the hell? Ren Xiaosu did not bother arguing with him. He definitely did not want to learn how to brag since it would be useless even if he learned it. So he could only consider it a waste of a skill duplication scroll. Then he used the second skill duplication scroll. One of the target's skills will be randomly copied. Randomly copied target's deception skill. Do you want to learn it? Learn, my ass. What the hell is this? Ren Xiaosu glared at the young doctor. You've got quite a lot of messed up skills for someone so young. The young doctor was on the verge of crying. What are you talking about? Don't mind me saying this, but do you like cheating people a lot? Ren Xiaosu asked, who've you cheated before? Why don't you tell me about it? Don't you bullshit me. Who have I ever cheated? Ren Xiaosu was a rational person. After suffering such a heavy loss, he meticulously analyzed his current situation. He certainly needed to learn some medical skills. He was sure that the palace would give him another skill duplication scroll in the future, but he did not know when it would assign him another quest to get them. Hence, Ren Xiaosu wanted to find out how good his target's medical skill was and whether it would be worth trying to continue learning from him. He asked in his mind, what's the level of that doctor's medical skill? This information can be revealed if it's for a former target that you've attempted to learn from. He has no medical skill. What the fuck? Motherfucker. Ren Xiaosu wanted to smash the large cauldron that he was carrying right then and there. He had carried the pot with him when he came out this morning. No wonder you're so fucking good at deception. Damn it. So it turns out that you don't have any medical skills at all and have been swindling people all this time? How did the old doctor get such a good-for-nothing son? This guy was utterly relying on the reputation of the old doctor to get by. Since there wasn't a second doctor in town, he had no qualms about swindling others. If his patients managed to survive, then good for them. For those who did not, the people around here were used to death anyway. After all, there were also some patients that the old doctor couldn't save. Moreover, before the old doctor passed on, he left behind a lot of medicinal herbs for his son and even labeled what symptoms each type would treat. All he needed to do was to give a prescription to his patients. Ren Xiaosu learned a lesson today. If he encountered another such situation in which he was unsuccessful at copying a skill on the first attempt, he would have to make sure that the other party had the skills that he wanted in the first place. After he reached the school, he started racking his brains. Then he remembered the scene when they stepped out of the pawn shop last night. The woman was crying loudly at the door of the clinic while the man was bleeding non-stop. In the end, his heart stopped. Ren Xiaosu unwittingly looked at the skin between his thumb and index finger. The infected wound had scabbed over today? So that black ointment not only reduces inflammation, it can even quickly heal a wound? Ren Xiaosu had been wounded before, so he knew a great deal about the healing process of the human body. For example, a wound caused by a sparrow's peck would take at least 7 days to scab over. Wait a minute. Ren Xiaosu got an idea on how he could become a doctor. If that person at the clinic could become a doctor through deception and bragging, why couldn't he also become a doctor? This was especially true as he had a miracle medicine on him now. Wouldn't it be fine if he just opened a clinic that specialized in knife wounds? He could just stitch up the patient and then apply some black ointment onto it and the job would be done. Back when the old doctor was still alive, he mentioned that he would not do suturing because he did not have the necessary sterilization equipment. If outside bacteria stayed in the body, they could kill the patient, so it would be useless even if he did stitch them up. The old doctor understood this. However, it was different for Ren Xiaosu. He did not have to worry about this at all. Thinking of this, Ren Xiaosu got an idea. He even thought of how he could make some arrangements for Xiaoyu in the future. Xiaoyu's plan for the future was to see if she could get some sewing or patching jobs to earn some money to make a living. But Ren Xiaosu felt that this would be very difficult for her. If she were to offer this service in the stronghold, there would probably be a lot of customers looking for her. But as everyone in town was poor, they could do their own sewing and patching work at home. Who would want to waste their money on a service like this? Ren Xiaosu thought that since she wasn't going to be able to sew clothes, she could sew wounds instead. But he did not know if Xiaoyu would faint at the sight of blood. Ren Xiaosu even specially went to inquire with the schoolteacher, Zhang Jinglin. After all, he knew more than most people. Zhang Jinglin looked at Ren Xiaosu in surprise. You want to open a clinic that specializes in treating knife wounds? Do you have sutures? Ren Xiaosu thought for a while and asked, what's a suture? Zhang Jinglin was dumbfounded. Then do you have anesthetics? What's an anesthetic? Zhang Jinglin was at a loss for words. In this moment, Zhang Jinglin realized that Ren Xiaosu was utterly unprepared. Zhang Jinglin patiently said, do you know why the clinic has never thought of doing such procedures when there are so many patients with knife wounds in town? It's not only a problem of bacterial infection. There's also a lack of anesthetics and sutures. I heard that these supplies are desperately needed even within the stronghold. Zhang Jinglin continued, there's also a particular way to administer the anesthetic. If too little is administered, it will be painful for the patient. But if too much of it is administered, the patient will be susceptible to complications. As for the sutures, it's even more difficult. Not only do you have to consider the tensile strength, you also have to consider if its coefficient of friction will allow it to penetrate the tissue of the human body. Oh, so it's like that. Ren Xiaosu waved his hand around. That's not a problem. A dying person won't care about the pain. I'll just use threads for sewing clothes to stitch them up. Then what about the sterilization? Zhang Jinglin asked in a startled manner. I have a secret formula for that. Ren Xiaosu said. It was just as Ren Xiaosu had predicted. Zhang Jinglin was not omniscient. He had some specialized knowledge, but the rest of his knowledge rested at a superficial level. As such, Zhang Jinglin suddenly realized that he did not know how to refute Ren Xiaosu. In the end, he gave a wave of his hand. Get ready for your class. The next period will be the survival lesson. Because Ren Xiaosu had tasted the sweetness on the first day he taught the class, he decided to prolong the lesson again until night fell before dismissing the class. Some of the students still did not realize the kind of life they were going to live from now on. After school, the students started walking out of the class. When Ren Xiaosu noticed that no one thanked him today, he could not help but take the initiative to ask, aren't you guys going to thank your teachers? The students shuddered in fear as they collectively turned around and thanked their teachers. However, Ren Xiaosu was utterly disappointed when he took a mental look at the palace. He did not gain even a single gratitude token coin. Zhang Jinglin had already told him that it was quite normal for the students to not understand the teacher's perspective. Ren Xiaosu felt that he still had a long way to go. On their way back home that night, Ren Xiaosu could see that the lights were on in their shack from a distance away. He hurriedly went over and lifted the curtain door. When he stepped inside, he was surprised to see Xiaoyu sitting in their broken chair and sewing their clothes for them. There was even corn porridge and cooked wild vegetables next to her, which she had made for them. They usually left their clothing in the shack since no one would steal them. Even if someone stole the clothes, the thief would have to wear them out someday. Once they did that, they would get recognized. It would be a surprise if Ren Xiaosu did not beat the thief to death. When Xiao saw them return, she smiled and said, "Sorry that I came in without your permission. I saw that your clothes were ripped, so I decided to sew them up for you. Quick, eat dinner." Yan Liuyuan reached his hand out, wanting to scoop out some porridge. This meal was considered a luxury in town. Normally, they would only eat black bread or potatoes for their meals. However, Ren Xiaosu slapped Yan Liuyuan's hand. "Have you thanked Big Sister Xiao yet?" Yan Liuyuan still behaved himself in front of Ren Xiaosu. "Thank you, Big Sister Xiao." Xiao quickly said, "Stop hitting Liuyuan. I can spoil him now, but no one will spoil him when he's on his own," Ren Xiaosu explained. Then he also said in a serious tone, "Thank you, Big Sister Xiao." "You're welcome." Xiao smiled and said, "What do you two usually like having for dinner?" Yan Liuyuan said, "We don't usually eat dinner." "How can that do?" "You're both still growing," Xiao said. For some reason, Ren Xiaosu suddenly felt that Xiao should have been their sister all this while. No one would say such words to them in the past. "Big Sister Xiao," Ren Xiaosu asked, "your sewing skills are great. Why don't you come over and help us when our knife wound clinic opens for business?" "A knife wound clinic?" Xiao was stunned. "Why do you suddenly want to open a clinic that specializes in knife wounds?" "Because I have a medicinal herb formula for treating knife wounds. It can reduce inflammation and help wounds heal quicker." After Ren Xiaosu finished, he showed the wound on his hand to her. Xiao took a look at it and noticed that Ren Xiaosu's wound had already formed into a scab. Xiao thought for a moment and said, "But there are much fewer fights happening in town these days. In the past, more than 10 people would get injured each day, but only one person gets injured every few days now." This was indeed true. Excluding the person killed by Ren Xiaosu and the man at the clinic entrance yesterday, it seemed that there were really no fights happening recently. The cases of night break-ins weren't counted because there wouldn't be any survivors left most of the time. Ren Xiaosu pondered it for a moment. "Why don't I go and chop some people up?" He quickly shook his head. At the same time, Yan Liuyuan was shocked. "Bro, aren't you being too ruthless? What is this? Promoting your own product? No, we can't do such things. We mustn't get carried away by our own interests." By exchanging the gratitude tokens for the black medicine and selling them, it seemed that it would slow down his progress of unlocking the weapon. But the more black medicine he exchanged with his gratitude tokens, the more gratitude tokens he would get in return, right? This was an exponential growth, and it might even help to unlock the weapon faster. Moreover, he could still make do with Yan Liuyuan's bone knife. In the short term, he would not need to go out to hunt. Thus, bringing home the bacon became his utmost priority. He had to earn some money first. Last night, Ren Xiaosu had a dream. He dreamed that he was standing in the wilderness with a black knife in his hands, the knife as dense and mysterious as the night. Ren Xiaosu went out early the next morning. He did not carry his cauldron today, taking only Yan Liuyuan's bone knife with him. Now that Xiao was staying home to look after the two shacks, it became very unlikely that they would lose their belongings during the daytime. And frankly, the people in town who harbored evil thoughts would only dare to bully the weak. Why would they resort to stealing from the ruthless Ren Xiaosu? Not needing to carry the cauldron out with him felt amazing. As a promising young man, Ren Xiaosu wouldn't look good if he had to carry the cauldron out every day wherever he went. Today, he went out to the wilderness not because he needed to hunt, but to pretend that he was gathering medicinal herbs. Ren Xiaosu was a very cautious person. Since he claimed that he had a herb formula, he would have to gather the herbs. Only then would he not be suspected by others. Although Ren Xiaosu did not hear about anyone being against supernatural beings, Ren Xiaosu understood the principle. If you wanted to ensure your survival among a group of chaotic people, you would have to blend in with them. Tall poppies get cut short, the tallest tress get blown over first, don't flaunt your wealth. These ancient sayings were warnings to everyone to not posture. When he came back to town, it was still noon. When Ren Xiaosu carried a large bunch of medicinal herbs back, someone he knew asked, "Ren Xiaosu, why are you carrying all these weeds around? Are these weeds?" Ren Xiaosu stared at him and said, "These are medicinal herbs." Medicinal herbs? The person asking was dumbfounded. As someone born and raised right here in town, wouldn't he know what those plants were? No one had ever thought of them as medicinal herbs before. Ren Xiaosu said conspiratorially, "As long as you add in different fractions, you can concoct a medicine that can be used to treat wounds. How do you think I recovered from my past injuries?" The questioner thought for a long time. "Didn't you pull through due to sheer willpower? Get lost." Ren Xiaosu did not stop in his tracks and headed straight back to his shack. Xiao was currently sewing Ren Xiaosu and Yan Liuyuan's clothes. When she looked up and saw Ren Xiaosu walking in with a large bunch of medicinal herbs, she put the patchwork in her hands down. "What are all these?" "These are the medicinal herbs used to concoct the secret formula," Ren Xiaosu explained. Ren Xiaosu set up the cauldron and started a fire. He added some water in and pretended to concoct the medicinal herb formula. In the process of concocting this formula, the costliest part was actually the water. Water was a much more valuable resource than the firewood used or the weeds that were put in. He even purposely lifted the shack's curtain door to let the people in town see what he was doing. A lot of people saw Ren Xiaosu brewing a herb concoction, but no one dared to approach him to ask what it was. Ren Xiaosu was starting to feel unhappy about this. The reason he lifted the curtain door was so that people would come over to ask him what he was doing. When that happened, he would be able to promote his medicinal concoction. After waiting for a long time, no one approached him to ask about it. Ren Xiaosu pulled a long face as he looked at a skinny man who was surreptitiously lurking outside the entrance. "You?" The skinny man pointed at himself. "Me? Yes, come over here." Ren Xiaosu waited until the skinny man warily came closer. Then he said, "Ask me what I am doing already." The skinny man was speechless. So was Xiao. "Go on, ask," Ren Xiaosu urged him. "What are you doing?" the skinny man asked. With his motive achieved, Ren Xiaosu broke into a smile. He said with a kind look, "I'm brewing a herbal concoction. I usually brew this type of medicinal herb concoction when I get injured. It not only reduces inflammation and stops pain, it can also make the wound heal faster. In the past, I kept this medicine hidden from everyone. But now I've realized my mistake. So I've decided that I want to make the concoction and share it with everyone. From today onwards, I'll open a clinic that specializes in treating wounds. Is anyone injured and in need of treatment?" The people standing outside were stunned by the speech that Ren Xiaosu had just given. However, everyone just looked at one another before dispersing. No one believed him. What a joke! Ren Xiaosu, you might be impressive, but to suddenly claim that you can treat people's wounds is bullshit. Everyone in the entire neighborhood knows that you pulled through by enduring your injuries in the past. But now you're suddenly telling us that you have a medicinal herb concoction? Like we'd believe you. Ren Xiaosu wasn't very happy about this. He had to make everyone learn of the medicine's effectiveness. It was very simple because he had personally tried it before. The moment he applied the medicine on the wound, the pain and burning sensation vanished and then scabbing formed the next day. If only he could make everyone learn of its effectiveness. Business would boom, right? Ren Xiaosu brought the small vial of ointment with him and went around town looking for patients. Which place had the most patients? The clinic, of course. When Ren Xiaosu reached the clinic, he realized there was not a single patient there. In fact, the fees for the doctor's consultation were so expensive that nobody could afford to come here. Ren Xiaosu glared daggers at the young doctor before turning around and walking away. The young doctor who was leisurely sipping tea suddenly became a little nervous due to Ren Xiaosu's intense glaring. Left with no other choice, Ren Xiaosu went to find other opportunities in town. It wasn't until every factory had ended work in the afternoon that Ren Xiaosu finally spotted a skinny man with a cut on his hand. Ren Xiaosu was overjoyed. "Brother, did you injure your hand during work? I have a wonder drug here. Do you want to try some?" The skinny man looked at him warily as he felt that Ren Xiaosu's tone did not sound reputable. "No need. Come, try it." Ren Xiaosu went forward and held the skinny man down. To promote his black medicine, Ren Xiaosu even bent his most important principle. "I'll make it cheaper for you." But the man was still unwilling. After all, the black stuff on Ren Xiaosu's hand looked a little dubious. Ren Xiaosu clenched his teeth and said, "For the sake of publicity, I'll treat your wound for free this time." All right, put away your knife first." When Ren Xiaosu came out looking for patients to treat, he had brought a bone knife with him. So Ren Xiaosu convinced himself that the beginning was always the most challenging as a consolation. People with big goals should not be hindered by trivialities. He would have to be generous as a person. Ren Xiaosu was not stingy for the sake of it. He knew well what he had to do at the appropriate times. However, he couldn't help but feel the pinch. Xiao consoled with a smile, "Don't worry, you'll definitely succeed." After saying that, Xiao returned to her shack and went to bed. In the past, she could not sleep all that well at night. But since moving here, she could always sleep soundly every day. The next morning, the stronghold's clock abruptly rang as though it were reminding everyone that it was time to go work at the factory. Ren Xiaosu returned with the allocated amount of water that he was allowed to draw for the day. He estimated that it would take 12 hours for the wound to start scabbing over after the black medicine was applied, so he was not in a rush to see what the reactions of the people in town were. Once everyone learned of the effectiveness of the medicine, people would naturally approach him with questions. However, Ren Xiaosu did not expect that when he carried the bucket of water back, Wang Fugui would be there waiting at the entrance of the shack with a smile. "Old Wang, what are you doing here so early?" "I haven't been out to catch any sparrows lately," Ren Xiaosu said unhurriedly as he put the bucket on the ground. He glanced into the shack. Quick-witted Yan Liuyuan had already raised his bone knife to guard against Old Wang. It was only after he saw Ren Xiaosu that he finally lowered the bone knife. When Wang Fugui saw Ren Xiaosu, his eyes shimmered. "Oh, Xiaosu, you're finally back. I came over this early in the morning just to look for you." "Why?" Ren Xiaosu felt that something was amiss. What could make Old Wang that happy? He examined Old Wang closely and said, "Have you been drinking?" Wang Fugui immediately looked annoyed. "What do you mean by drinking? Don't you know that alcohol is prohibited now? Who'd be brave enough to drink when everyone does not even have enough food to spare?" "I remember smelling something particular on you the previous time." Wang Fugui's expression became thunderous in reaction to Ren Xiaosu's words. He quickly interrupted him and said, "Don't you spout nonsense." All right, I won't." "Why are you looking for me?" Ren Xiaosu asked. "Did you treat Ironhead's wound yesterday? The one who lives on the east side of town?" Wang Fugui said as he winked at him. "Oh, so he's called Ironhead. His head doesn't feel that hard to me, so why does he have that name?" Ren Xiaosu wondered. "Don't interrupt me," Wang Fugui said, "just tell me if you did or not." "Yes, I did." Ren Xiaosu was beginning to cheer in his mind. Wang Fugui was a person who would not look for someone without a reason. It must be the black medicine's effectiveness that attracted him and made him see the profitability of it. Why else would he be so polite towards him? This proved that the market for his black medicine was opening up. Wang Fugui was elated when Ren Xiaosu admitted to it. "Do you still have that medicine? You can give them with me. I'll sell it for you." "You want to sell it for me? No way. Ren Xiaosu shook his head. I can't have a middleman taking a cut of the profit. This town is so small already. Wouldn't it be better for me to sell it myself? It's not like I'm planning to sell my medicine at every stronghold out there. Besides, even if I had such a big business, you wouldn't be able to handle it. Wang Fugui was stunned at Ren Xiaosu's words. Right, this town was tiny, so why would Ren Xiaosu let him sell the medicine for him? But Wang Fugui said again, it's fine even if you sell a little bit of it to me. Ren Xiaosu scrutinized Wang Fugui. You don't look injured, so why would you need this medicine? Wang Fugui smiled mysteriously and said, you still don't know, right? Yesterday, Ironhead got a little suspicious after returning home. He wanted to know what you applied to his wound. So he smelled it but couldn't make out what it was. After that, he licked it, trying to taste what it was made with. Guess what happened as a result? Ren Xiaosu wondered what the hell was wrong with that guy. He'd even licked it. There was nothing wrong with the black medicine's effectiveness. When Ironhead inspected his wound that night, he knew that Ren Xiaosu did not lie to him. It was indeed a good medicine. Driven by curiosity, he was hoping to find out what it was made with. Wang Fugui continued, in the end, he and his wife went at it all night, all the way until this morning. That medicine of yours is way too effective. Ren Xiaosu was shocked. Yan Liuyuan, who was in the shack, was also shocked by what he heard. Ren Xiaosu had also wondered whether the black medicine could be taken orally and if there would be any side effects. He felt that maybe it could be taken orally, but he did not dare to try it out himself. Now he found out that the medicine had such an effect when it was taken orally. To be able to do it from night until morning, just what kind of medicine was this? Ren Xiaosu did not know whether to laugh or cry. Then why are you buying this medicine? He had good reason to ask this. He knew Wang Fugui's wife had passed away several years ago due to illness. So he wouldn't have any reason for taking this medicine. Wang Fugui said unhappily, can't I have a second chance at love? It's just that my body's a little weak now. You found another woman? Ren Xiaosu chuckled. Not yet, old Wang said, but I'm thinking about it. No one would want to marry an impotent man, right? That's why I want to be ready with your medicine. Ren Xiaosu laughed. You're funny, Wang Fugui. Old but energetic. What kind of wife are you looking for? Wang Fugui said modestly, as long as she likes me, it's good enough. Ren Xiaosu mulled it over. That's not an easy requirement. Wang Fugui was annoyed. Are we close? Wang Fugui said with a dark expression, I'm one of the richest people in town anyway, so why wouldn't a woman take a liking to me? Ren Xiaosu sighed, a little melancholic. One of the richest people in our town is a grocery store owner. Why does that sound a little shameful? Who are you to criticize me? Cut the crap. Do you want to sell it or not? Yes. Ren Xiaosu gave it some thought before saying, you get the special acquaintance discount, 600 yuan. Highway robbery. Wang Fugui said angrily. For now, the amount of black medicine that Ren Xiaosu had left was only enough for a one-time treatment of wounds. However, based on old Wang's description of the medicine being effective with just one lick, the remaining portion should still be enough for quite a few more licks. However, the sought-after effects of this medicine when taken orally were not driven by necessity, so he could not sell it for too much. Do you want to buy it or not? Ren Xiaosu snorted at Wang Fugui. Yes. Wang Fugui then counted out 600 yuan and paid it to Ren Xiaosu. He did not even try to haggle over the price. Ren Xiaosu could never have expected that the market for his black medicine would get opened in such a manner. His initial plan was to become a doctor so that he could practice medicine to help the people. He never thought he would become an aphrodisiacs supplier instead. Wang Fugui spun around and said to Ren Xiaosu, thank you for this. Gratitude received from Wang Fugui, +1. Ren Xiaosu was speechless. He finally had 4 gratitude tokens again, although this gratitude token was earned a little differently from how Ren Xiaosu had expected. Ren Xiaosu was unhappy about this. He whispered, "Is this a matter of making money? How many sincere gratitudes can I even get from this?" Ren Xiaosu understood that if he relied on this effect of the medicine to sell it, then the chances of gaining the sincere gratitude of others would be much lower than through saving people's lives. It was only people like Old Wang who desired to re-inject some intimacy back into their private lives who would show their gratitude to him. Besides, was his motive to make money? No, he still needed people's gratitude more. Without it, he would not be able to get more black medicine. Ren Xiaosu said in annoyance, "If I healed people and saved their lives, everyone in town would start treating me with respect whenever they see me. Just look at that fellow down at the clinic. Even though so many people have died in his care, no one does anything to him. Why? Because he's the only doctor in town." "You're right, bro," Yan Liuyuan agreed. In reality, it did not matter to him at all. All he knew was, they were going to get rich. And most importantly, Ren Xiaosu said, "If I healed people and saved their lives, everyone would address me as Dr. Ren whenever they saw me. If I don't heal people and save their lives, do you know what they'll call me behind my back? Hey, that drug dealer." It was obvious that the social standing of the two were not the same. Yan Liuyuan couldn't hold it in any longer. He was convulsing with laughter in the shack as he said, "Bro, you have an overactive imagination." However, Ren Xiaosu was unaware that Old Wang did not use the medicine that he bought from him. After all, Old Wang had not found a lover yet. The vial containing the black medicine was nothing unique. It was just a small, normal-looking porcelain bottle that could be found everywhere in town. The original vial that contained the black medicine was made of glass, and the craftsmanship was of an exceptional caliber. Ren Xiaosu was worried that people would get suspicious of the medicine again and learn where it came from. After all, no one sold this kind of vial in town. Wang Fugui passed on the small porcelain bottle to one of the town administrators. He was also one of the few people who was sent out here from the stronghold. Old Wang felt that Ren Xiaosu did not know the value of the medicine, but he did. Which place needed this black medicine's effect most when it was taken orally? Was it the men in town? Nope. Although the men in town barely had enough food to eat, with some of them even skin and bones, everyone was still performing physical labor. Even if they were skinny, their health was actually great. With enough exercise, maintaining the body's metabolism and functions of organs would not be difficult. As such, the men in town did not really need this black medicine. The people who needed the black medicine most were actually the aristocracy in the stronghold. Wang Fugui furtively handed over the black medicine to the administrator who had been sent by the stronghold. The town administrators were people who had knowledge of all the ongoings in town. Their daily work was to gain insight into any unusual activities happening in town. Hence, this administrator also knew about the incident from last night when Ironhead licked the black medicine. However, the administrator did not use it either. After he went back at night, he regifted it to his superior. Nobody knew where the small porcelain bottle with the black medicine eventually ended up. Ren Xiaosu had no knowledge of any of this. He used another gratitude token in exchange for another vial of black medicine. Then he had Xiao buy a white linen cloth from town. Afterwards, he had her sew the word clinic onto it using black thread, as well as the words kind doctor specializing in wounds in a smaller size underneath. With that, the clinic began operating. While Xiao was sewing, she asked Ren Xiaosu if he wanted her to sew the words magic hands restore spring. Ren Xiaosu quickly turned her down as he was a little sensitive to the word spring one right now. Ren Xiaosu's life slowly got on track from here. Before dawn, he would go and gather herbs in the wilds. During the morning, he would stay in his shack to attend to patients. In the afternoon, he would go to the school to teach survival lessons. After that, he would use Yan Liuyuan's notes to catch up on his homework. Although there was no business at his clinic yet, he could not afford to be away from here. If a patient came to see the doctor, Xiaohu could not handle it alone. He would have liked to sit in the bright and spacious classroom like Yan Liuyuan and learn. But if he went to school to study, what would happen to Yan Liuyuan and Xiaohu? In this family, there had to be someone who was willing to sacrifice their aspirations. The next day, Ren Xiaosu was sitting and resting in the shack with the curtain door lifted wide open. Xiaohu was sewing and patching behind him. Sometimes, Xiaohu would lament how these two brothers did not even patch up their clothes once in the past. How on earth did they accumulate so many holes in them? At this moment, someone sprinted over from the other end of the dirt track with a bleeding arm. Ren Xiaosu's eyes lit up. You might die if you don't get your injuries treated. However, that man did not even look at Ren Xiaosu. Everyone would still subconsciously head to the clinic to treat their injuries since that place was the more authoritative one. Besides, everyone's impression of Ren Xiaosu was still that drug dealer rather than someone who treats knife wounds. Then the long-awaited voice intoned from the palace in his mind, "Quest, successfully treat one patient." Ren Xiaosu stood up and said disconsolately, "I'm sorry." After that, Xiaohu saw Ren Xiaosu dash out of the shack. Less than a minute later, she saw him carrying that man back. Ren Xiaosu kindly said to the patient, "That doctor at the clinic is a quack. Do you know that by carrying you back here, I'm saving you?" As the man had been bleeding for a long time, he did not have any more strength. The man nearly crumpled with Ren Xiaosu holding him down firmly. At this moment, another two men ran over from the opposite side of the dirt track. Seeing their bodies stained with blood, Ren Xiaosu was stunned. "Did y'all get into a fight?" When the man who was being held down heard that, he explained, "No, it's the boiler at the factory. It exploded. The injuries that we sustained are light, so we could still run back here by ourselves. However, I'm afraid that some people died on the scene." Ren Xiaosu nodded in silence. In the present, no one would be so kind-hearted as to bring you to get your injuries treated in the event of an accident at the factory. They couldn't wish more than for you to die so that your belongings would go to them. "Come, big sister Xiaohu, sterilize the needle," Ren Xiaosu said. Although he was not worried about the inflammation, he still had to put on an act for the patient, right? After he said that, he went outside again. This time, he brought back another two men. Ren Xiaosu used both his hands and a leg to hold the three of them down. The three of them lost all will to resist. If not for their injuries, Ren Xiaosu would never have been able to hold them down. In fact, they knew they could also get treated at Ren Xiaosu's place. However, they were running towards the clinic out of sheer habit. Now that they had been pinned down, they might as well stop resisting altogether. Then they saw Xiaohu put down the patchwork in her hands. She took the needle that she had been using to sew the clothes and placed it over the fire. As this needle was a little longer, she did not get burned while holding the other end. "Do I just stitch them up?" Xiaohu asked timidly. "Yes. Just stitch their wounds like you're sewing clothes." Ren Xiaosu smiled and said, "It's quite simple." Xiaohu mustered up her courage and proceeded to suture the wound on one of the patients. However, the skin sizzled, the smell of burning flesh accompanying it. The man trembled as he asked, "I understand that you are using fire to sterilize the needle, but could you at least wait for the needle to cool before you start stitching?" Xiaohu was not afraid of blood. Frankly, everyone in town was used to seeing people die all the time, so it wasn't such a big deal when they had to face minor injuries like these. Besides, she really enjoyed her current job. It wasn't that she liked seeing blood, but that she liked being a useful person. It was common knowledge in town that everyone had to be useful in the current environment as it was full of hardship and difficulties. Useless people would get abandoned sooner or later. This was the simplest logic for deciding who to live around. Xiao was unsure if Ren Xiaosu and Yan Liuyuan would abandon her due to her uselessness, but she knew that she couldn't just do nothing and leech off of them. When she heard Ren Xiaosu tell her to stitch up the wound like she was sewing clothes, her confidence grew and her stitching motions became much more consistent. Furthermore, Ren Xiaosu was still holding down that man by his arm, so it made it easier for her to put her sewing skills to good use. When the suturing was almost finished, Xiao said to Ren Xiaosu, "There's still some difference between stitching up a wound and sewing clothes. When sewing clothes, the thread should stay hidden in the clothes as far as possible so that it won't be visible. But for the suturing of a wound, the thread should not be left inside and has to be reverse stitched. However, that makes it look quite ugly." The three patients became incredibly uncomfortable. The more Xiao said, the more flustered they became. When Xiao finished suturing, Ren Xiaosu took out a small porcelain vial and applied the medicine onto the first patient's wound. "My medicine is very precious, but I will not overcharge you for it. I'll just charge you the same fee as the clinic does, 600 yuan. I believe all of you should be able to afford it." The price of a cotton-padded jacket was around 600 yuan. However, these workers' salaries per month were probably at around 2,200 to 2,800 yuan. This made the price of the goods sold relatively expensive to their salaries earned. But all of this was due to a supply and demand issue. The aristocracy in the stronghold could not wish more for these people to earn as little as possible for the rest of their lives. In that way, they would have to keep working earnestly for the aristocrats. Besides, these workers could not just drop everything and leave since they would not be able to survive in the wilderness. The aristocracy relied on this to exploit the refugees. In the opinion of the aristocracy, it was already nice that they did not make the refugees pay protection money to them when they were living under the protection of the stronghold. But that was only because they felt that protection racketeering was below them. The reason Ren Xiaosu could get by in the past without needing to go to work at the coal mine was because he only needed to hunt 3 sparrows a month to earn more than the majority of workers. Even if he did not manage to hunt 3 sparrows, he could scrimp and save and still be able to lead a normal life. These were abnormal times, and people tried resisting it at the beginning. However, they all failed. Ren Xiaosu was right that the 3 men could afford the fees. After the black medicine was applied to the wound of the first patient, his pain immediately stopped. He paid up very willingly as the fee would have been the same if he went to the clinic to treat his injury. When the patient who had just been treated was about to leave, Ren Xiaosu said amiably, "Shouldn't you be saying thanks now that you've been treated?" The man shuddered and quickly turned his head back and said, "Thank you." Ren Xiaosu nodded in satisfaction. However, when he had a look in the palace, he was startled to find that he did not gain any additional gratitude tokens. Ren Xiaosu thought, "Are patient-doctor relationships these days all as tense as that? I've treated your wound, yet you won't even give me a sincere thank you." Immediately, Ren Xiaosu heard the voice from the palace informing him that he had completed the quest. Quest complete. Awarded 1.0 strength. The quest to successfully treat 1 patient was finally complete. He did not expect the palace to award him with another 1.0 strength increase. It was also one of the things that Ren Xiaosu desired most at this moment. After all, whoever had the bigger fist won. The voice from the palace intoned again, "Quest, successfully treat 2 patients." So this was a repeatable quest? When the first quest was completed, another quest of a higher difficulty would appear. Weren't there 2 patients in front of him right now? Would he be awarded another 1.0 strength increase after completing this quest? In that case, wouldn't he end up looking like a beefcake? Actually, that wouldn't be good because he would be sacrificing his speed for more strength. With greater muscle mass, it would lower the speed at which he could put them to use. The fastest runner should be someone with the most balanced muscular build, not a bodybuilder with the most chiseled physique. As of now, Ren Xiaosu's strength was much stronger than the average adults. He deliberately made an observation and realized that no one had noticed that his muscles had swelled up this time. As it was late autumn, the clothes that he wore concealed his build quite well. But right at this moment, one of the patients took the opportunity to get up and run out of the clinic while Ren Xiaosu was distracted. Xiaoyu called out to him, "The patient is escaping." Ren Xiaosu smiled and said, "It's okay. He won't get far since he's still injured. I'll go and bring him back." Xiaoyu and the remaining patient were speechless. While Ren Xiaosu went out to catch the patient, Xiaoyu looked at the remaining patient and gently said, "Are you going to run away too? If you're also thinking of doing so, I'll suture you up afterwards." "No, I'm not gonna run away." That patient closed his eyes and put a determined expression on his face. "Go ahead and stitch me up." When Ren Xiaosu carried the patient back again, he didn't find it as strenuous as before and could carry him with just one hand. However, this made the patient despair. The following treatments for the patients were much easier to do. Ren Xiaosu used one hand for each person and held them down so no one could move. The two men who were being held down at this moment were rather astonished because they never expected to not be able to fight back against Ren Xiaosu. It was as though they were being dominated by him. Just how much strength would he need to achieve this? Even if they were injured, they shouldn't be that weak, right? They were still able to struggle a bit ago. What was most important here was, would anyone still be able to escape from Ren Xiaosu if he ever decided that he wanted to treat their wounds in the future? Quest complete. Awarded 1.0 Dexterity. Quest: successfully treat 10 patients. When Ren Xiaosu heard this voice again, he froze, because he could feel his muscles that had swelled up earlier had now started to deflate by quite a bit. Dexterity was a way to increase the strength of the muscle fibers. Upon reaching the same level of power, it would help to lower the muscle mass. In this way, Ren Xiaosu would not need to worry about looking like a beefcake. If Ren Xiaosu's muscle fibers in the past were as strong as a wooden staff, then the muscle fibers were now comparable to the strength of an iron rod. Right, this was more logical. The correct way would be to increase the quality, not purely build on the quantity. Moreover, his resistance to attacks would increase accordingly, right? Ren Xiaosu looked at the patient who had just attempted to run away. "Do you understand now the benefits of the black medicine that I applied on you? It can stop your pain immediately, and the wound won't get inflamed afterwards either. I can't understand why you'd run away." The patient hemmed and hawed for a long time before finally saying, "I don't have enough money." Ren Xiaosu was pained. He said resentfully, "Why didn't you run faster then?" Ren Xiaosu grimaced and said, "The others have already paid and left. Tell me, how are we going to settle this? We are a clinic, not some charity organization. Then why don't you tell me how I should settle it?" The man was about to cry. Seeing how he was no match for Ren Xiaosu and was unable to afford the treatment, he might just end up dying here today. "Look here," Ren Xiaosu said nicely, "why don't you try to recall whether you have any money hidden somewhere at home?" "No. Who would dare to hide their money at home these days? Even your own wife is not trustworthy." The man was nearly driven to despair. Ren Xiaosu started getting a little impatient. "You're a grown man, so don't act like you're being bullied. Just tell me how much money you have on you. It's almost the end of the month, so there's only around 5 days until I get paid. We can't save much money doing what we do. I'm asking how much money you have on you." Ren Xiaosu yelled. 432 yuan, the man sobbed. He definitely could not allow him to write a promissory note. In the current day, if he let someone sign a promissory note today, who knew if that person might just end up dead the next day? Ren Xiaosu was wondering whether this man had any other valuables on him. All of a sudden, Ren Xiaosu thought of something. He said as his eyes lit up, "How about this? I don't think it's easy for you either, so why don't I waive the remaining fee for you? You can just give me whatever money you have in your pocket. You can keep the 32 yuan for your meals. Scratch that, you can keep 2 yuan for your next meal. When the man heard that, he teared up with emotion. Thank you so much. Gratitude received from Dong Ming's Hawaii, +1. Ren Xiaosu was ecstatic. He had finally found a way to gain the gratitude of his patients. First, he had to set a reasonable price. If the clinic charged 600 yuan, he would charge 600 yuan too. In this way, no one would feel that he was ripping them off. Secondly, he would have to put on an act. Even if it meant earning less money, he would earn their gratitude. Making money wasn't the priority, gaining gratitude was. Only by gaining gratitude could he earn money. Within a short period of one day, Ren Xiaosu had already made 1,630 yuan. This was even faster than if he had gone to hunt for sparrows. Moreover, there wasn't any danger involved. For now, Ren Xiaosu's number of gratitude tokens was back to 4. It might look like there wasn't an increase, but it was more important he had found a method to gain more of them through trial and error. At this moment, Ren Xiaosu was happily thinking about buying a set of fall clothing for Yan Liaoyuan. He turned around and glanced at Xiaoyu. And he could buy a cotton-padded jacket for Xiaoyu to wear through the winter as well. Now that Xiaoyu had become their clinic's nurse, Ren Xiaosu couldn't let her work for nothing, right? But there was no hurry. He could wait and see roughly how much they made in a month before deciding how much to pay Xiaoyu. When news of the boiler explosion at the factory spread, many of the town's women got very worried. They were all afraid that something happened to their husbands. In the afternoon, Ren Xiaosu sat in his shack as he waited for the factory workers to return so that he could intercept and carry them to the clinic for treatment. But in the end, he didn't see anyone else coming back. The person who found it most unbearable would have to be that swindler at the town's clinic. After he heard about the boiler explosion, he excitedly waited for the patients to come. However, no one came to him to seek treatment even as night fell. As such, the young doctor went out and asked around. He'd clearly heard that 3 injured people ran back in the afternoon, but why didn't any of them come to him to get bandaged? However, after asking around, he felt blue-balled when he found out that his business had been stolen away by someone. He wondered who would be so brave as to steal away his business. After asking around again, he found out that it was Ren Xiaosu. The young doctor deliberated over this before he finally clenched his teeth in anger. So what if it was Ren Xiaosu? Could he steal someone else's occupation just because he was Ren Xiaosu? However, the young doctor felt that something was amiss. How did Ren Xiaosu suddenly know how to treat wounds and save people? When he first heard about the black medicine, he only thought of it as something that Ren Xiaosu had randomly concocted. He had doubts about it at that time, but he had no choice but to believe it now. He angrily went to look for Ren Xiaosu to demand an explanation. When he arrived at the door of Ren Xiaosu's shack, Ren Xiaosu was paring a potato with a bone knife. Ren Xiaosu stabbed the potato with the bone knife, piercing right through it. Ren Xiaosu asked nonchalantly, "You're looking for me?" "Oh, it's nothing. I just wanted to ask if you've eaten yet." The young doctor laughed dryly. Ren Xiaosu looked at him and said, "Yu Tong, you aren't young anymore. You've been depending on the old doctor's reputation long enough. It's running out. I advise you run home and flip through the old doctor's medical books so that you don't flounder in the future." "What are you talking about?" Yu Tong said diffidently. "I study the medical books every day." "That's good then." Ren Xiaosu lowered his head and continued paring the potatoes, ignoring him. Honestly speaking, Ren Xiaosu and the others did not used to peel their potatoes. They ate the entire thing, skin and all. By peeling them, a substantial amount of the potato would go to waste. But it was different now. Ren Xiaosu had become rich, so he got a swelled head. All of a sudden, over a dozen people ran into town and shouted, "This is bad. Something terrible has happened." Ren Xiaosu frowned. He pulled one of them over and asked, "What's going on?" "The scent of blood after the factory boiler explosion has attracted a pack of wolves. That man said disconcertedly, I don't know where the wolves came from, but there are a lot of them. How many is a lot? Ren Xiaosu asked again. I'm afraid there are over 100 of them, at least. This was indeed terrible. It looked like the fate of the workers remaining at the factory was grim. The wolves hadn't appeared in over a year. During this time, everyone had almost forgotten about their threat. No one knew where they had gone to during this year-long disappearance, but now that they were back, their numbers had increased by several times. However, the wolves did not dare to come and ravage the town because of the tall walls. And on top of these walls, there were firearms and explosives. This was why the refugees had gathered outside of the walls and built a town around it. What are you looking at? Eat your food, Ren Xiaosu told Yan Liuyuan. After saying that, he sat down and continued eating his food. Meanwhile, Yan Liuyuan looked outside curiously as he ate his food and said, Bro, how did you manage to survive back then? You've never talked about it before. Ren Xiaosu gave him a look but did not answer the question. Xiaoyu, who was beside them, also looked at Ren Xiaosu, although she did not ask him anything. After Yan Liuyuan finished eating a potato, Ren Xiaosu handed him another one. You should eat more so that you can grow better. Only then will you have a better chance of survival than others. Bro, are you worried that the wolves will come into town? Yan Liuyuan looked at Ren Xiaosu, who still had a frown on his face. No, Ren Xiaosu shook his head and said, they are much smarter than you guys can imagine, so they won't risk it by coming here. If the boiler at the factory did not explode and cause those injuries and deaths, they wouldn't even have gone there. They weren't attracted to the smell of blood in the first place. It was the smell of death that made them go there. Then what are you worrying about, bro? Yan Liuyuan wondered. Ren Xiaosu thought for a long time. What if the walls collapse one day? Xiao was taken aback. Will these walls collapse? I don't know. Ren Xiaosu shook his head again. But there's nothing that ever stays the same in this world. Actually, I've encountered the wolf pack twice. The first time, I managed to run away after spotting them from afar. But I wasn't that fortunate the second time around. However, it feels like they're getting much stronger than before. In fact, Ren Xiaosu was also wondering what would happen if the walls collapsed one day. What would happen to this society? Actually, a boiler explosion at the factory was not exactly a serious matter. After all, the factory's boiler had blown up on more than one occasion due to years of poor maintenance. It was different this time, however. In the past, the wolf pack wouldn't have dared to attack a factory under the control of humans. Almost every factory had over 1,000 workers working in them, and it would get especially rowdy on the streets outside of town after the workday ended. Some of the workers would return to town to stay for the night while others would simply sleep overnight at the factory's dorms. The factories operated around the clock with 3 shifts of workers. The wolf pack was bold enough to venture into a small human settlement positioned right next to the stronghold. There was something very bizarre about this indeed. As the soldiers accompanying the band said, Stronghold 113 was situated in a larger circular group of other strongholds, and being on the inside of this circular group, it made their stronghold safer compared to the other places. At the beginning, the stronghold was still sending troops to garrison the factory. But when everyone realized that there were no wild animal attacks on the factories, they withdrew the troops and only left behind some guns for the factory managers to use in case of emergency. That night, the stronghold's city gate was suddenly opened. A loud rumbling could be heard as the stronghold's gate opened up. Then several hundred soldiers carrying loaded guns marched out. These were the private troops of Stronghold 113. Or to more aptly put it, they were the private army controlled by the Qing Consortium, the group behind Stronghold 113. The schoolteacher, Zhang Jinglin, once unwittingly mentioned that the consortium was the actual controller of the stronghold these days. They had power over the lives of humans and possessed weapons that could be used to fight off the dangers of the outside world. With money and weapons, they were firmly in control of the entire stronghold. This was the first time Ren Xiaosu and Yan Liuyuan had ever seen so many soldiers come out of the stronghold. Yan Liuyuan was hiding in the shack and secretly watching the private army as they marched out of town. He muttered, "Bro, are those guns they're carrying on their backs?" Those black guns looked brutal and menacing. However, Ren Xiaosu was not surprised that he could recognize all of those weapons. Moreover, he had a feeling that, as long as he could get his hands on those firearms, he could use them to great effect immediately. The private army was not marching in an orderly fashion. There was an off-road vehicle leading the way, but the formation of the soldiers following it was a mess and could even be called chaotic. Someone from the private army complained, "Isn't it just some people dying at the factory? Why can't we head there tomorrow morning? Why do we have to go there and kill the wolves tonight?" "Shut up," the higher UPS ordered this mission. Someone glared at him. "What's there to be afraid of? It's not like those jackoffs in office can hear us anyway. They're probably still sleeping with women right now," that man grumbled. He then lit himself a thinly rolled cigarette. Ren Xiaosu once again caught a whiff of that unusual smell of cigarettes. He frowned as he started increasingly distrust the stronghold's private troops. At this moment, the smoking soldier from the private army turned around and saw Ren Xiaosu and Yan Liuyuan looking at his automatic rifle. He scolded, "What are the two of you brats looking at? Do you know what this is? Quit staring. You wouldn't know how to use it even if I gave it to you." Ren Xiaosu pulled the curtain door down, although he did not agree with the latter half of what the soldier said. For some reason, he deduced that the soldier might not be good at marksmanship. His right shoulder pocket that was supposed to bear the recoil of the rifle did not show any signs of long-term training with firearms. In reality, what Ren Xiaosu didn't know was that firearms these days were also quite precious resources in the stronghold. Usually, the private army's officers would not let the soldiers waste their ammunition. If they had that kind of budget, they would rather go drinking or look for women to fool around with. Alcohol was prohibited outside the stronghold, but it was not the case on the inside. Yan Liuyuan wondered, "Bro, why do I feel that you seem to know about their guns?" Ren Xiaosu gave him a look and said, "Don't ask so much." Yan Liuyuan complained, "Do I still have any standing in this family?" Ren Xiaosu was thinking about something else as he replied nonchalantly, "Don't think too much about it. Your role in the family is just to stay alive." Yan Liuyuan was speechless when the sound of the private army's marching got further away. Ren Xiaosu shot to his feet and told Yan Liuyuan, "Go to Big Sister Xiaohu's shack tonight and stay there for a while. Come back only after I return." "Bro, where are you going?" Yan Liuyuan asked in a stunned manner. By the time he finished asking, Ren Xiaosu had already quietly lifted the curtain door and gone out. A lot of people had gathered on the streets, so no one took any notice of Ren Xiaosu's whereabouts. Usually, no one would dare to come outside at night. But today, everyone had left their houses and come outside as though they were celebrating the new year. Ren Xiaosu navigated his way through the darkness. After leaving the proximity of the town, he began to bolt it forward. The moonlight was not very bright on this night, but as Ren Xiaosu had been going out of town almost every day for the past few years, he could essentially walk out here with his eyes closed. The stronghold's private army took the main road while Ren Xiaosu chose to go by a parallel path to avoid bumping into them. He came out here not for anything else but to see if there was an opportunity. As for what kind of opportunity it was, he was not sure yet. Guns. It was the guns that enticed Ren Xiaosu to come out here. Ren Xiaosu had acquired advanced firearms proficiency, so he knew very well how important firearms were in today's era. The private troops who were accompanying the band once said that they were carrying firearms with them and that any wolves would flee if they heard their gunshots. Ren Xiaosu, who had encountered the wolf pack before, knew exactly how terrifying they were. But such terrifying creatures were afraid of gunshots? Ren Xiaosu did not know what would happen to these private troops if they came face to face with the wolves. He was not thinking of getting their guns because his target was actually the factory. The people in town all knew that the factory managers were assigned firearms. According to the people who returned after fleeing the factory, it was already over for those who remained behind. Ren Xiaosu had been wondering about it since the afternoon. Didn't they say that wolves were afraid of the sound of gunshots? Then shouldn't the managers be able to scare them away by just firing a few shots? Perhaps they did not expect that the wolves would come, so it could have been too late for them to draw the guns. Or maybe the wolves carried out a sneak attack on the shooters. There could also be some other reasons, but the guns were probably still there at the factory. Ren Xiaosu ran as fast as he could towards the factory. He was more familiar with this place than the private army was. And besides, the private army was marching there while he was running. Suddenly, a gunshot rang out in the darkness. Then a prolonged series of deafening gunshots rattled through the night. There was even the screaming of humans. Ren Xiaosu suddenly turned around and looked in the direction of the sound. Clearly, the private army had encountered the wolves, and many of them were still getting attacked after firing their guns. Didn't they say the wolves were afraid of gunshots? Didn't they say it was an animal's instinct to avoid danger? Today, Ren Xiaosu gained a new awareness of something. Although beasts had evolved to become stronger, they had never been able to overcome their animal instincts. Rabbits still ate grass, and wolves were still afraid of gunshots. Unless everything had changed. At first, the troops thought that they could scare away the wolves by just firing their guns, but it turned out they were wrong. The wolves did not panic this time when they heard the gunshots. By the time the wolves appeared in front of them, the private troops were shocked to discover that these wolves were even bigger than they had imagined. They were the size of bison. Wait a minute. After these wolves attacked the factory, they waited in the only possible path that the private army would have to pass through. Why did it seem like they had been targeting these private troops from the very beginning? However, the private troops were trained soldiers. Before the casualties started piling up, they fell in and began to defend. Comparing the firearms of humans with the sharp teeth and claws of an animal, firearms would still come out on top in the end. The private army had dealt with the wolves on more than one occasion. In recent years, they had slowly started pulling back on their plans to encircle and keep the wolves suppressed after being instructed to do so by the people in charge. Of course, this also gave the wolves some respite. For some reason, as Ren Xiaosu listened to the gunshots, he found the cracks to be so pleasant that his adrenaline started pumping. The gunshots excited him. He didn't go and take a closer peek at the battle. All he knew was that if the wolves and the private army were fighting now, it would be safe for him to go to the factory. Ren Xiaosu ran like a cheetah through the wilderness. For the first time, he could get a complete sense of his newly obtained strength and dexterity. His muscle fibers tensed up and relaxed over and over again. This sort of feeling could only be described as invigorating. When Ren Xiaosu neared the factory, he finally slowed down. He hid in the darkness and approached it quietly. Ren Xiaosu was surprised to see many of the refugees' dead bodies lying around. It seemed like they had wanted to escape back to town but were caught by the wolves one after another. Only a minority of them were lucky enough to escape at the expense of their companions. Ren Xiaosu painstakingly examined their wounds. They looked like they had been bitten in the neck by the wolves and died immediately. However, the wolves did not feed on their corpses and seemingly left in a hurry. Ren Xiaosu thought for a while. He did not enter through the main entrance, instead climbing his way up a pipe on the outside of the factory building. Each time he passed by a window, he would scrupulously check if there were still any survivors inside. When Ren Xiaosu got to the top floor of the building, his heart sank. It didn't look like any survivors remained in the factory. The wolves had already swept through the entire factory, sparing no one. Where are the guns hidden? Ren Xiaosu wondered. The factory managers would definitely not place them where it would be easily accessible to others. Ren Xiaosu broke the glass window on the top floor and jumped into the building. He looked around and saw that the hallway was full of bloodstains and corpses. The large factory felt like a purgatory. All of a sudden, Ren Xiaosu realized something was off. All of the corpses looked like they had been running in the same direction when they were alive, as though something was guiding them towards it. What would attract people to run towards the same place at such a crucial time? Ren Xiaosu came to a conclusion. That place would either be the location of the weapons storage or a hiding place. He followed this path all the way until he ended up in the basement. Was this the emergency shelter? The more he walked forward, the more corpses there were. Ren Xiaosu could imagine what the scene looked like when everyone was trying to escape in panic from the wolves. They wanted to escape to a safe place, but they were not fast enough to outrun the wolves. Ren Xiaosu arrived at an iron door. Indeed, everyone was escaping towards this place because they wanted to get in. No matter how much the wolves had evolved, they were still only flesh and blood. It would still be rather difficult to break through an iron door several inches thick. Ren Xiaosu wondered if anyone was still behind the iron door. He hesitated for quite a while before he raised his fist and knocked on the blast door 3 times. Someone behind the iron door shouted happily, "Is that the private army? You've finally come to rescue me. I'll open the door right away." The rhythm of the knocking was obvious and could not have been made by a wild animal. As such, the person on the inside mistook Ren Xiaosu as a soldier from the private army that had been sent to rescue him. With a loud grinding sound, the iron door burst open and revealed a middle-aged man on the inside. He had a leg wound, and his pants were stained red with blood. Even as he opened the door, he was standing on just one leg. However, the moment the door opened, both parties took action. Ren Xiaosu bent low and prepared to rush him. When the middle-aged man saw that the person in front of him was not a soldier, his first reaction was to raise his pistol. The atmosphere grew tense. Ren Xiaosu stopped in front of the middle-aged man because the black muzzle of the pistol was pointed right at his forehead. "Hee," the middle-aged man laughed. "So it's a little burglar who wants to take advantage of the situation, eh? I recognize you, you're Ren Xiaosu from town." Ren Xiaosu also recognized him. The middle-aged man was the factory manager, Wang Dongyang. "I recognize you too," Ren Xiaosu said as he straightened up as though nothing had happened. "Why are you the only person in there?" "No, you were the first person who fled here, and you closed the door immediately while keeping everyone else outside." Ren Xiaosu felt a sudden chill pass through him. No wonder there were bloody handprints all over the outside of the iron door. So it turned out that it was because of the refugees' crazy thumping on it. When the iron door was closed from the inside, it was impossible to open it via normal means from the outside. Wang Dongyang laughed and said, "You don't need to bother yourself with such matters. If you carry me back to town now, I'll spare your life." "And what if I refuse to carry you back?" Ren Xiaosu started laughing as well. "Then I will just kill you with one shot. After that, I'll lock the door again and continue to wait for the army to come and rescue me. I'm a resident of the stronghold, so they will definitely come and save me," Wang Dongyang said. "You must be afraid that I'll tell everyone how you sold out everyone here and left them for dead, right?" Ren Xiaosu continued to laugh and say. Wang Dongyang sneered at him. As the pistol gave him tremendous courage, he had no fear at all. "How do you know that?" Ren Xiaosu pondered for a moment. The father knows his son the best. Wang Dongyang was confused. Then factory manager grew infuriated. "Do you think I won't kill you?" "I also know another thing," Ren Xiaosu said calmly. "What?" Wang Dongyang had a bad feeling about it. "I know you didn't disengage the safety on the gun, and it's too late for you to do so now." Wang Dongyang's pupils suddenly contracted. He had originally thought that it was the private army who came, so he didn't really think too much of it. But when he saw that it was Ren Xiaosu, and Ren Xiaosu had rushed in so decisively, he did not have enough time to disengage the safety. He had thought that he could easily frighten Ren Xiaosu because he felt that a refugee like him would not have seen a gun before or know how it worked. He thought that he would only feel fear with one pointed at him. However, Ren Xiaosu knew more about guns than the majority of people in Stronghold 113. A second later, he suddenly took a step back as he wanted to use this opportunity to disengage the safety. But Ren Xiaosu would never give him the chance to do so. He charged at Wang Dongyang like a cannonball, crushing Wang Dongjiang's ribs. Even his gun was sent flying out of his hand. Wang Dongyang had nothing to rely on now. He laid on the ground, coughing up blood, and said, "Let me go. I'll tell you where I kept all my belongings." "Tell me first and I'll let you go," Ren Xiaosu said calmly. "Do you think I'm stupid?" Wang Dongyang actually knew this was just a futile attempt to be let off. How could this teen possibly let him go? If Ren Xiaosu allowed him to leave, could he still survive in the vicinity of Stronghold 113? And when Wang Dongyang first learned of the existence of Ren Xiaosu, he was even referred to as ruthless Ren Xiaosu. "Your lungs have already been pierced by your broken ribs, so it's too late for you even if you go back to town now." Ren Xiaosu laughed. Although he was eager to get Wang Dongjiang's belongings, it was clear that he would not tell him where he kept them. Ren Xiaosu wasted no time here. He did not know when the battle between the private army and the wolves would end. But if he dragged his feet around here any longer, it would not end well for him no matter which side arrived at the factory. The sound of a sharp weapon cutting through leather tore the air. Ren Xiaosu used the bone knife to imitate a wolf's claws slashing across Wang Dongjiang's chest, creating fake wounds. He waited until he was certain Wang Dongjiang's vital signs had stopped before he picked up the pistol and headed out. Ren Xiaosu also took the 2 magazines Wang Dongyang carried on him. There were a total of 36 bullets. By the time Ren Xiaosu left the factory, no one remained alive. Ren Xiaosu turned around and gazed at the building where a bloodbath had taken place. Behind him was the darkness of night. This was the world he lived in. "Bro, are you all right?" Yan Liuyuan said eagerly when he saw Ren Xiaosu lift the curtain door and walk in. He circled around Ren Xiaosu to check if there were any bloodstains on him before he felt at ease. "I'm fine." While tying the bone knife back around his calf, Ren Xiaosu asked, "Did anything happen in town while I was away? Is the private army back yet?" "Some of them have returned. They brought some wounded soldiers back with them, as well as the dead bodies of their fellow soldiers and carcasses of the wolves. I heard that the rest of the troops continued on to the factory," Yan Liuyuan said. Ren Xiaosu didn't think that this was unusual. No matter how strong the wild wolves might be, it would be impossible for them to win when faced with a private army that was several times greater than them in number. Moreover, the soldiers were even carrying weapons with them. "How many wolf carcasses did they bring back?" Ren Xiaosu asked. "Over 30 of them." Yan Liuyuan said, "Bro, those wild wolves are enormous." When Yan Liuyuan had asked Ren Xiaosu what size the wolves were, Ren Xiaosu just described them as very big. As for what very big truly meant, Yan Liuyuan found out today. Ren Xiaosu frowned. He was glad that he hadn't stayed at the factory for too long. Otherwise, he would likely have run into the private army that arrived at the factory shortly after. It seemed that the wolves withdrew once they felt that their ambush had failed. So the battle with them did not delay the private army for too long. It was no wonder he didn't hear any gunshots in the wilderness when he came back via an alternate route. However, the wolves were getting stronger and smarter. If they let them go this time, the people in town might have to face an even stronger attack from them the next time. Suddenly, a commotion brewed outside. Ren Xiaosu lifted the curtain door and watched what was happening. It turned out that a group of 10 soldiers from the private army had driven back in advance in an off-road vehicle. An officer in the vehicle said, "Anyone who volunteers any information on those who went out of town tonight will be handsomely rewarded." Ren Xiaosu was taken aback because he knew they were clearly looking for him. They must have already gone to the factory and looked around the place. Ren Xiaosu had thought that it would be impossible for a normal person to discover the phoniness of Wang Dongjiang's wounds. However, there was still a crucial problem that could not be reconciled. Wang Dongjiang's pistol had gone missing. If someone worked backwards upon discovering this problem, it would be easy to get clues on what had happened. This was something that Ren Xiaosu could not prevent. Bro Yan Liuyuan got worried as he looked at Ren Xiaosu. "I'll be fine." Ren Xiaosu pushed Yan Liuyuan's head back into the shack. Ren Xiaosu carefully recalled that he did not take the main road when he left town. If he remembered it accurately, no one should have any idea that he had gone out other than Yan Liuyuan. The soldiers were standing guard at the entrance of the town. Soon after, all of the other soldiers returned as well. The people in town watched. Right afterwards, the private troops began going door to door and rummaged through every household's storage chests and cabinets. They were searching for that gun. Suddenly, a familiar voice shouted, "I know who went out in the middle of the night." Ren Xiaosu turned around and saw that it was the clinic's doctor, Yu Tong. He was looking at Ren Xiaosu with a smile on his face and standing very far away from him, as he was afraid that Ren Xiaosu would try to kill him. The private army's officer strolled over and asked, "Who?" "It's him, Ren Xiaosu. I saw him go out of town with my very own eyes," Yu Tong said with an arrogant smile. Ren Xiaosu did not deny this. He admitted, "At that time, the town's common privy was occupied by Hezong, so I had to go outside to relieve myself." "Who is Hezong? Is he telling the truth?" the officer shouted. Hezong, who was standing nearby, had a dumbfounded look on his face as he did not know how he suddenly got implicated in this. He said meekly, "Indeed, I had diarrhea tonight." "Many people can testify." The officer turned around and looked at Ren Xiaosu as he sneered, "Search." After he said that, Wang Fugui darted out before his soldiers could rush into the shack. "Wait a minute, he's someone who has been singled out by one of the aristocrats in the stronghold to be taken care of. You can't treat him like this." The officer was stunned. "What do you mean?" In the afternoon, Boss Luolan from the stronghold specially ordered for him to be taken care of. Even Ren Xiaosu himself doesn't know about this yet. But as for why he is doing this, you'll have to ask Boss Luo yourself. It's not convenient for us to reveal it to you, Wang Fugui explained quickly. "Boss Luo." The officer was a little surprised. Everyone could tell from his reaction that he clearly knew the boss who went by the name of Luolan. In fact, it even seemed like he was a big shot in the stronghold. The officer thought for a moment and said, "Even if he is Boss Luo's guy, we must still search him. This is a very serious matter. I'll personally apologize and explain it to Boss Luo tonight." After saying that, the soldiers rushed into Ren Xiaosu's shack and rummaged through their belongings. Another 2 soldiers carried out a body search on Ren Xiaosu. 2 minutes later, the soldiers were all shaking their heads when the search did not turn up anything. The officer looked at Ren Xiaosu. "Bring me to the place where you took a dump." Ren Xiaosu frowned as he made his way out of town. He didn't expect the officer to be so rigorous with the checks in order not to miss any details. Yan Liuyuan, who was behind him, was about to run over. However, Ren Xiaosu turned around and snapped, "Get back inside." Yan Liuyuan's eyes reddened. Ren Xiaosu led the officer and soldiers out of town. He pointed to a pool of feces and said, "There, it's still hot and fresh." The officer had a look at it and then ordered the soldiers to continue searching the other households. They did not bother with Ren Xiaosu anymore. Ren Xiaosu could finally heave a sigh of relief. Fortunately, he was well prepared. Before he left town, he observed the surroundings and thought of a reason before he came back. Not only did he bury the gun outside of town, he also laid the last of the situational evidence to cover his lie, by taking a dump right outside of town. He turned his gaze to Yu Tong, who had been following them. Yutong pissed his pants when he saw the daggers in Ren Xiaosu's eyes. Later, he recalled that he had not seen Yutong at that time. Ren Xiaosu knew he would have to be wary of Yutong after stealing his business in case Yutong tried to take revenge on him. After all, it was always necessary to be cautious of scheming people in times like this. As such, if Ren Xiaosu did not have any impression of such dangerous targets appearing in his memory, it would surely mean that the other party had not witnessed him leaving town. Therefore, it was more than likely that Yutong was deliberately lying to frame Ren Xiaosu. As for whether Yutong had considered the consequences of unsuccessfully framing him, Ren Xiaosu felt that he was not smart enough to have considered this scenario. In the past, Ren Xiaosu could tolerate Yutong's antics. As he had stolen some of his business away, Ren Xiaosu could not bear to thoroughly break his living. Thus, he exhorted Yutong to return to his medical books and study them well. In the end, not only did he not take his advice, he even plotted against him. Ren Xiaosu sneered as he looked at Yutong, who had turned tail and fled back to town. There was also a puddle on the ground where he had been standing. Next to him, Wang Fugui laughed and said, "Looks like my intervention was not needed after all. You were going to be all right anyway." Ren Xiaosu turned his head to Wang Fugui and thanked him earnestly. He would remember those who were willing to step forward and put in a good word for him in a situation like this. "Hey, no need to be so polite." Wang Fugui smiled brightly. "If not for Boss Luo's appreciation of you, I would have been too scared to step forward and speak up for you. Boss Luo specifically sent someone to bring word to the town administrators to look out for you." Ren Xiaosu was taken aback. "Who's Boss Luo? Does he know me?" Wang Fugui winked at him and whispered, "That medicine of yours. Boss Luo likes it a lot." Ren Xiaosu was speechless. Ren Xiaosu realized that the black medicine that Wang Fugui purchased from him had been sent into the stronghold. Boss Luo has given his word that as long as you hand over a fixed amount of the black medicine on time each month, he will ensure that you'll be free from trouble here outside the stronghold, Wang Fugui said with a smile. In reality, he had an ulterior motive for doing this. After all, he could ensure his own safety by acting as the intermediary for Ren Xiaosu's black medicine that Boss Luo wanted. Suddenly, Ren Xiaosu got an idea. "Is Boss Luo very influential and powerful in the stronghold?" "You still don't know, do you?" Wang Fugui declared proudly, "He is the Qing Consortium's representative in Stronghold 113. If he's the representative of the Qing Consortium, why isn't his surname Qing?" Ren Xiaosu felt that something was off here. "Don't go shooting your mouth off after I tell you." Wang Fugui lowered his voice to a whisper. "It's said that he's the half-brother of some big shot within the Qing Consortium, an illegitimate son of the family. Then can you ask Boss Luo to help get us into the stronghold?" Ren Xiaosu thought that if an influential person like Boss Luo, who had great authority in the stronghold, helped them, it wouldn't be too difficult to get them in, right? "We're all contaminated, so how can we be allowed inside the stronghold?" Wang Fugui said with a sad frown. "Besides, if you get into the stronghold, who's going to pick the wild medicinal herbs for Boss Luo?" Ren Xiaosu had a realization. The latter half of the sentence was actually the truth as to why he wasn't going to be allowed into the stronghold, right? For Boss Luo, there was no reason at all to bring Ren Xiaosu and the others in. He could leave them outside the stronghold and have Ren Xiaosu continue supplying him with the black medicine. That same night, Yan Liuyuan suddenly ran a high fever. Ren Xiaosu exchanged a bottle of black medicine and tried applying it on Yan Liuyuan's forehead, but it did not make his fever go down. Ren Xiaosu sat beside the bed and looked at the feeble Yan Liuyuan. He said with a sigh, "You didn't have to make a wish for this. Don't make any wishes without me asking you to do so in the future, understand? The fevers that you get as a result could end up killing you." Yan Liuyuan could barely open his eyes as he said weakly, "But what am I to do if something happens to you?" Ren Xiaosu lowered his head and thought for a long time. Don't be stubborn. I will definitely ensure that we'll lead a comfortable life together someday. MHM. The next morning, when Ren Xiaosu went to town to fetch water, he was surprised to hear a piece of news. Yu Tong had packed all of his belongings and money and run away in the night. He would rather face the dangers lurking in the wilderness than face Ren Xiaosu. Someone said that Yu Tong had gone to Stronghold 114 because it was the closest to Stronghold 113 and was also in the opposite direction of where the wolves appeared. As long as he took the main road there, he should be fine. Ren Xiaosu did not know whether to laugh or cry. Yu Tong had actually run away in fear. However, something that surprised Ren Xiaosu even more happened. Chen Heidong, who was an administrator sent from the stronghold, came knocking on his door. He asked affably, "Ren Xiaosu, I heard that you know how to heal people and save their lives." Ren Xiaosu was taken aback. "I can only treat knife wounds and external injuries." That's fine, that's fine." Chen Heidong was smiling even more happily now. "That still makes you a doctor. Now that our town no longer has a doctor, do you think you'd be interested in becoming one?" Yan Liuyuan, who was still lying down in the shack with a fever, opened his eyes in shock. This brother of his had only wanted to earn some gratitude tokens and money initially, so how did he suddenly become a real doctor? Furthermore, he was going to become the only doctor in town too? He didn't even have to make a wish for that. Was it because it was unnecessary to make that wish for Ren Xiaosu's incident last night that it somehow changed his luck? However, Ren Xiaosu understood that this was only happening because the administrator, Chen Heidong, was also trying to get into Boss Luo's good books. Authority made the people around you want to serve you meticulously. Ren Xiaosu was not dumb. He agreed immediately and said, "About that house at the clinic, can I?" "Yes, you can." Chen Heidong said with a friendly smile, "You totally can. You can move in today since no one is living there." Chen Heidong then walked off, his hands behind his back, while humming a little ditty. Right after, Old Wang came back with a wooden box tucked under his armpit. After Old Wang arrived, some of the people, who were rumored to be members of the richest group in town and lived in brick houses, also dropped by. Some of them operated small gambling dens, drapers' shops, and grain shops. Old Wang said, "Congratulations, Ren Xiaosu. You get to live in a brick house just like that." During the conversation, Old Wang handed a gift box to Ren Xiaosu. "I got a small present for you and Liuyuan. Since both of you are still growing, eating this will help strengthen your bodies." Curious, Ren Xiaosu opened it and was surprised to see a white lump. "What is this?" "You don't know what this is, right?" "I've kept this bird's nest for many years," Wang Fugui explained. "It's really nourishing." Ren Xiaosu had only heard of this stuff. He had never seen it before. However, he had always had doubts about it. Mr. Zhang Jinglan said that bird's nest is made from a swiftlet's saliva, but I don't think that the viscosity of saliva can be that thick, so it's probably made of phlegm. Wang Fugui was annoyed. "Don't make my gift sound so disgusting," he said unhappily. "Then what about bloodbird's nest one? What is that made of?" Ren Xiaosu gave it some thought. "Phlegm tainted by blood." These people were all holding some gifts in their hands. Actually, everyone here was no stranger to Ren Xiaosu. Their main intention in coming over this time was to exchange civilities with Ren Xiaosu. What this meant was that they had accepted him into their circle, and they were all going to be friends from now on. Ren Xiaosu did not stand on ceremony with them. Yan Liuyuan was still lying in bed and recuperating at this moment, so if there were tonics for them, why not? "Ren Xiaosu." Old Wang pulled him aside and said, "You should move into the clinic as soon as possible. There are 2 other houses attached behind the clinic, and it comes with a yard measuring over a dozen square meters. A lot of people are already eyeing the place." Okay." Ren Xiaosu nodded. He was still quite polite towards Wang Fugui. Furthermore, Boss Luo has gotten his people to send you some medical supplies from the stronghold. These are all worth quite a bit of money. I've already told them to send the supplies to the clinic. The most expensive ones are the anti-inflammatory pills and anesthetics. You had better keep an eye on them, Wang Fugui whispered. There are people who steal anesthetics as a substitute for their smoking addiction when they can't get their hands on cigarettes. I've suffered losses from such cases. Ren Xiaosu was taken aback. He didn't think that anesthetics had such an effect. However, it was still good to have someone give him things for free. Hoping for more, he asked, did he send anything else? There's a banner as well. In the morning, Ren Xiaosu and Xiaohu threw their belongings together in a pack and headed to the clinic. Who would want to live in a shack when they could live in a brick house with bright windows and clean tables? He had already planned for Yan Liuyuan and himself to live in one of the two rear houses, while Xiaohu could live in the other. Xiaohu had initially lived in a brick house. After that, she moved into a shack for the sake of these two younger brothers. Now that Xiaohu could live in a brick house again, one of Ren Xiaosu's wishes could be considered fulfilled. But when Ren Xiaosu walked into the clinic carrying Yan Liuyuan on his back, he was dumbfounded. He saw a banner hanging in the middle of the clinic's wall. It was emblazoned with the words "Magic Hands Restore Spring from Luolan." According to Wang Fugui, as long as the banner was hanging in the clinic, no one would dare to do anything to Ren Xiaosu. But of course, Ren Xiaosu would first have to not involve himself in anything that went against Luolan's interests. This would act as a talisman for them, even though it made Ren Xiaosu feel very uncomfortable. He did not know if Luolan had casually instructed his people to make the banner or if he was deliberately teasing him. It's probably the former, right? After all, in Luolan's eyes, Ren Xiaosu was only a refugee who sold medicine outside of the stronghold. Ren Xiaosu helped Yan Liuyuan get settled in. Ren Xiaosu did not tell Xiaohu about Yan Liuyuan's condition last night because he was afraid to disturb her sleep. She only found out about it this morning, so she was feeling terrible. Yan Liuyuan was thoroughly enjoying Xiaohu's meticulous care for him. Suddenly, he thought of how he always used to make fun of her, so he said weakly, "Big sister Xiaohu, I'm sorry for behaving the way I did in the past." Xiaohu looked at him. "The two of you are imps, so there's no need to apologize to your sister. But if you weren't more mature than the other kids, you wouldn't have survived until now. That's mainly because my brother is amazing." Yan Liuyuan laughed. "I wonder how much hardship that kid has had to suffer through the years." Xiaohu sighed. "Countless hardships," replied Yan Liuyuan calmly. Ren Xiaosu was currently browsing through and checking the medicine that was left behind in the clinic, as well as the new medical supplies sent over on the orders of Luolan. Perhaps someone had informed Boss Luo that he specialized in treating wounds, as he had sent a lot more anesthetics and anti-inflammatory pills over. Ren Xiaosu was overjoyed when he saw that there were fever relievers and antidotes inside the crate of medicine. He brought the anti-inflammatory pills, fever relievers and antidotes to Yan Liuyuan and made him take them. The main symptom of Yan Liuyuan's illness was the inflammation of the tonsils caused by excessive internal heat. It didn't matter if this medicine was suitable for the symptoms. It would cure the illness. There were also some medicinal herbs in the clinic. Some of the cabinets had the names of medicinal herbs written on them and the treatment suggestions for the different types of symptoms. Ren Xiaosu lamented how Yutong did not cherish his chances even though he had such a good father. That same night, Yan Liuyuan's fever finally subsided. Only then did Ren Xiaosu heave a sigh of relief. He said to Xiaohu, "You can brew the tonics that those people brought over. You and Liuyuan can eat them." "All right." Xiaohu nodded and went to make dinner. Recently, the three of them were just like siblings and were at ease around each other. Sometimes, fate was a wonderful thing. These three who did not seem to fit together did just that. When Xiaohu returned with the dishes, she shouted for Ren Xiaosu and Yan Liuyuan to eat. Ren Xiaosu suddenly thought of something and said, Xiaoyu, since you'll be living next door from now on, you can use the place as your bridal chamber when you get married. Xiaoyu's expression changed right as she was about to pass a bowl of rice to Ren Xiaosu. You're getting sick of me so soon? Do I eat a lot? Or do I waste money? Ren Xiaosu was stunned. Big sister Xiaoyu, that's not what I meant. Then what did you mean? Xiaoyu took the bowl back and said spitefully, Ren Xiaosu, you're such a heartless person. You're eating the food that I cooked and you still wish to kick me out? Even if I fed it to a dog, I wouldn't let you eat it. Xiaoyu then shoved the bowl into Yan Liuyuan's hands and said, finish the rice. Yan Liuyuan was confused. After saying that, Xiaoyu was the first to break into laughter. Then Ren Xiaosu and Yan Liuyuan laughed along. Yan Liuyuan suddenly felt that Xiaoyu looked tender and gentle when she was laughing. It was just a pity that she was born in the wrong era. Xiaosu, what plans do you have for the future? Xiaoyu asked as she ate. I've no plans at the moment. I'm just gonna take it one step at a time, Ren Xiaosu said. He was still most concerned about the quest weapon that had yet to be unlocked. Ren Xiaosu's initial wish was to ensure that he and Yan Liuyuan could carry on living well. But when he realized that he had a superpower, he couldn't help thinking that there was more that he desired now. For now, the repeatable quest was not complete. He still had to successfully treat 10 patients. He didn't know what the new quest would reward him with. As for the mysterious vending machine, would there be any other products besides the black medicine? All these unknowns were awaiting discovery. Yan Liuyuan looked at Ren Xiaosu with much anticipation. Bro, what are we going to do tomorrow? Can I help you treat the patients? Ren Xiaosu chuckled. Why? Are you well again? Yes, Yan Liuyuan replied. Having finished dinner, he was in rather good spirits. I'm feeling fine already. Ren Xiaosu nodded. Go to school if you're fine then. Okay.